The streets of ancient Rome held people moving through their days in patterns that repeated across generations without much change. The city existed for many lifetimes with routines that continued from one day to the next in familiar ways. People woke when light came through doorways or small window openings in their homes and living spaces. The day began early for most residents of the city and the areas surrounding it in all directions. Work started before the air grew warm in summer months or while frost remained in winter seasons. Rome was a place where daily tasks filled the hours between sunrise and sunset for most people living there. The population included many different types of residents who lived in various kinds of dwellings throughout the urban area. Some families occupied small rooms in large apartment buildings that rose several stories above the street level below. Other residents lived in ground-level shops with attached living spaces located behind or above the work areas they used. Wealthier families maintained private houses with interior courtyards and multiple rooms for different household activities and functions throughout the day. Morning routines began with simple actions that required little thought after years of repetition in the same household spaces. People dressed in tunics made from wool or linen depending on the season and their available resources and means. Children helped with small tasks appropriate to their age and physical capability when they were old enough to contribute. The preparation of food took substantial time each day because preservation methods were limited to salting and drying techniques. Water came from public fountains fed by aqueducts that brought supply from sources located at considerable distances away. People carried water in ceramic vessels back to their homes for cooking and washing needs throughout each day. The weight of a filled jar meant multiple trips throughout the day to maintain adequate household supply for all uses. This task often fell to younger family members or others who lived within the household structure and daily operations. Bread formed the foundation of most meals throughout the social structure with variations in quality and ingredients used. Flour came from grain that required grinding using stone mills turned by hand or by animal power when available. The process of making bread involved mixing flour with water and sometimes adding salt when it was available for use. Dough needed kneading and time to rise before baking in communal ovens or private hearths located in homes. Work dominated the central portion of each day for adults in the household economy and broader community structure. Craftspeople worked in small shops making pottery or metalwork or textiles for local markets and neighborhood customers buying goods. Laborers moved goods through the streets or worked on construction projects throughout the growing city and its expanding areas. The rhythm of daily life followed patterns established over many generations before the current residents living in the city. Children learned tasks by watching adults and gradually taking on more responsibility with age and developing physical capabilities. Skills passed from parent to child through observation and practice rather than formal instruction for most trades and household work. The sameness of each day provided stability and predictability within the household routine and broader community structure over time. Each morning resembled the previous morning in the sequence of tasks and the motions required to complete them. The early morning hours in Rome involved preparation for the day's activities and responsibilities that would occupy the coming hours. Households stirred as natural light gradually filled the rooms and open spaces of dwellings throughout the city and surrounding areas. People rose from sleeping pallets or simple bed frames with woven rope supports and thin mattresses stuffed with various materials. Blankets made from wool provided warmth during cooler months while lighter coverings sufficed in summer heat and humidity conditions. The transition from sleep to waking happened without sudden movements or hurried preparations for most residents of the urban area. Dressing required selecting garments from limited wardrobes that most people possessed in their homes at this time in history. A basic tunic served as the primary clothing item for men and women and children across different social classes. The length and quality of fabric indicated social position within the community structure without formal announcement or verbal declaration. Wealthier individuals owned multiple tunics and outer garments while others made do with fewer items in their daily possession. Repairs to clothing happened regularly as fabric wore thin from daily use and washing over time with continued wear. Needles and thread remained essential household tools for maintaining garments in usable condition across months and years of service. Footwear consisted of simple leather sandals for those who could afford them while others went barefoot through streets regularly. The streets were paved with large stones in some areas but remained unpaved dirt in other sections of the city. Walking through the city meant navigating uneven surfaces and stepping around waste and debris accumulated overnight in public spaces. Street cleaners worked to remove some refuse, but the volume exceeded their capacity to maintain completely clean conditions at all times. People learned to watch their footing and move carefully through crowded thoroughfares during busy periods of the day and evening. Food preparation began with assessing what remained from previous days and what needed obtaining from markets that morning or later. Dried goods stored in ceramic containers provided staples that lasted weeks or months when properly sealed against moisture and vermin. Grain required checking for insects or moisture damage that could ruin the supply before use in cooking or baking bread. Olive oil kept in sealed vessels maintained quality for extended periods in cool storage areas away from direct sunlight exposure. Preserved fish and salted meats offered protein sources that supplemented fresh items purchased more frequently at market stalls and vendors. Grinding grain into flour remained a daily necessity for households that baked their own bread rather than purchasing it ready-made. The grinding stone required physical effort to rotate against the lower stationary stone surface repeatedly throughout the grinding process duration. Grain fed gradually into the center opening while flour collected around the edges for gathering into storage containers for later. The process produced noise that became part of the ambient sound in residential neighborhoods each morning without fail or variation. Arms grew tired from the repetitive circular motion, but the task continued until sufficient flour accumulated for the day's needs. Measuring flour happened by volume using standard containers rather than precise weighing for most households in the city areas. The amount needed depended on the number of people eating and whether bread from previous days remained edible for consumption. Mixing flour with water created dough that required working with hands to achieve proper consistency for rising and baking later. Kneading involved folding and pressing and turning the mass repeatedly until it became smooth and elastic to the touch. The rhythm of kneading became automatic after making bread countless times over years of practice in the same household. Dough needed time to rise in a warm location away from drafts that could slow the fermentation process significantly down. Covering the bowl with cloth kept insects away while fermentation gradually increased the dough volume over the waiting period ahead. The wait provided opportunity to complete other household tasks that required attention before midday heat increased throughout the city significantly. Sweeping floors removed dust and debris tracked in from streets on sandals and bare feet throughout previous days of activity. Shaking out sleeping blankets and airing them in sunlight reduced accumulated moisture and odors from repeated use night after night. Water collection required venturing to the nearest public fountain with empty vessels for filling and carrying back to home dwellings. The distance varied depending on residential location relative to fountain placement throughout the city districts and neighborhoods in various areas. Some people walked only a short distance while others traveled several blocks through crowded streets with care and constant attention. The weight of filled ceramic jars meant walking slowly and steadily to avoid spilling precious contents along the return journey. Multiple trips became necessary to supply household needs for cooking and washing and drinking throughout the day and evening. Public fountains flowed continuously with water from aqueducts that brought supply from sources outside the city walls and immediate boundaries. The engineering required to maintain steady flow involved careful calculation of gradient and channel construction over distance and varied terrain. Residents benefited from this infrastructure without needing to understand the technical details of its operation fully or at all. Water flowed and people collected what they needed in a pattern that repeated daily without variation across months and years. Conversations at fountains provided social interaction while waiting turns to fill vessels in an orderly manner without significant conflict or dispute. Returning home with water meant carefully climbing stairs in multi-story buildings without spilling the contents significantly during the slow ascent. The steps were often narrow and worn smooth from countless feet passing up and down daily for many years. Lighting in stairwells remained minimal, with only dim natural light filtering through small openings near roof level high above. People learned to navigate by feel and memory rather than clear vision of each step placement in the relative darkness. The journey up and down happened multiple times each day as water needs arose throughout household activities and meal preparation. Once dough had risen sufficiently, the process of shaping loaves could begin with practiced hand movements learned over many years. Dividing the mass into portions of roughly equal size created individual loaves for baking in sequence in the available oven. Shaping each portion into a rounded form required brief additional kneading and smoothing of the surface area with gentle care. Placing loaves on a wooden board allowed transport to the baking location, whether communal or private hearth, for the cooking. The board accumulated flour dust that required occasional scraping to prevent excessive buildup over time with repeated daily usage. Baking bread required maintaining steady heat in an oven or hearth without modern temperature controls or timers to provide guidance. Experience taught people to judge readiness by color and smell and the sound when tapping the bottom crust lightly with fingers. Removing hot loaves required care to avoid burns from direct contact with heated surfaces or the bread itself immediately afterward. Cooling happened gradually on racks or clean surfaces while steam escaped from the interior of each loaf over time slowly. The smell of baking bread filled living spaces and drifted into streets from numerous households simultaneously each day at similar times. While bread baked, attention turned to other food preparation tasks that required completion before the midday meal period would arrive. Vegetables needed washing and cutting for cooking in water or oil depending on the dish being prepared that particular day. Onions and leeks provided flavor to many simple dishes when combined with available herbs from market purchases or small gardens. Preparation involved repetitive cutting motions with simple iron blades that required periodic sharpening to maintain effectiveness with continued daily use. The same vegetables appeared in meals day after day with little variation in preparation methods or combinations over extended time. Cooking happened over small hearths or portable braziers that burned charcoal or wood for fuel as available in household supply. Maintaining fire required attention to prevent extinction or excessive smoke buildup in enclosed living spaces without chimneys or proper ventilation systems. Adding fuel gradually kept heat steady without sudden temperature changes that could affect cooking results negatively during the ongoing process. Stirring pots prevented food from sticking to the bottom surface and burning during the cooking process over extended periods. The task required remaining nearby rather than wandering away to attend to other activities elsewhere in the dwelling or neighborhood. The midday meal provided a break from morning labor for those who worked in shops or at-home tasks. People ate simple combinations of bread and vegetables and occasionally small amounts of meat or fish when available at market. Portions were modest by modern standards but adequate to sustain energy for afternoon work that would follow shortly after eating. Eating happened without elaborate table settings or multiple courses for most households in the city and surrounding rural areas. Dishes required washing after use to prepare them for the next meal later in the day before evening darkness came. Afternoon hours continued with tasks specific to each person's role within the household economy and broader community structure in place. Children who had completed morning lessons or chores might have limited time for play in courtyards or nearby streets. Games involved simple objects like stones or hoops or balls made from cloth scraps tied together with cordage or string. Play remained relatively quiet and did not involve running wildly through residential areas where adults worked nearby at various tasks. Supervision came from multiple adults present in shared spaces rather than dedicated childcare by individual parents exclusively throughout the entire day. Craftspeople returned to their work in shops open to the street where customers could observe the production process taking place. Potters shaped clay on wheels turned by foot power while hands formed vessels of various sizes and functions for sale. Metal workers heated iron or bronze in small furnaces and hammered heated material into tools and implements and decorative items. Textile workers operated vertical looms to produce cloth from thread spun earlier by hand using simple spindles and available fiber. The repetitive nature of craft work created steady rhythms of movement and sound that characterized each trade distinctively from others. Markets remained active through afternoon hours, though crowds thinned somewhat from peak morning buying periods when selection was freshest and available. Vendors called out their wares in repeated phrases that required no creativity or variation from day to day in their work. Prices were negotiated for larger purchases while small items sold at established rates known to regular customers through repeated experience. The exchange of coins or barter goods happened quickly without extensive conversation beyond what the transaction required practically for completion. People moved through market areas with purpose to acquire needed items before returning home to continue household tasks awaiting their attention. Laundry required soaking soiled garments in water mixed with urine or other alkaline substances to break down oils and accumulated dirt. Scrubbing fabric against itself or smooth stones helped remove embedded grime from wear and exposure to street dust accumulated daily. Rinsing in clean water removed cleaning agents and loosened soil before wringing removed excess moisture for drying purposes after washing. Hanging wet garments in sunlight facilitated drying while also providing some sanitizing effect from exposure to direct solar radiation throughout afternoon. The process took substantial time and physical effort for households with multiple members generating soiled clothing regularly through normal daily activities. Animal care fell to those households that maintained livestock in small pens or courtyards attached to dwellings in appropriate areas. Chickens provided eggs and occasional meat when birds aged beyond productive laying capability and required culling from active household flocks. Feeding birds involved scattering grain and kitchen scraps while ensuring water containers remained filled for drinking throughout hot weather periods. Collecting eggs happened daily with regular checks of nesting areas to prevent hens from hiding clutches in obscure locations around pens. The routine never varied much from one day to the next across months and years of maintaining small household flocks. Repairing household items occupied time when other tasks allowed a pause in the daily schedule of required activities and responsibilities. Broken pottery could sometimes be mended with pitch or resin, though badly cracked pieces were discarded as unusable for holding liquids. Damaged tools required attention from metal workers who could reheat and reshape iron that had bent or broken during regular household use. Wooden implements developed cracks from drying that could be bound with cord or replaced entirely if the damage proved too extensive. Maintenance prevented small problems from becoming larger issues that disrupted household function and required more costly interventions at later times. The late afternoon brought a gradual winding down of market activity as vendors prepared to close their stalls for evening hours. People completed final purchases of items needed for the evening meal or the following day's activities at home or work locations. The flow of foot traffic through streets decreased as residents returned to their dwellings for evening meal preparation and subsequent rest. Shadows lengthened as the sun descended toward the horizon and the angle of light changed across building facades and street surfaces. The transition from afternoon to evening happened gradually without sudden change in the pace of activity throughout residential neighborhoods and commercial areas. Evening meal preparation involved simpler dishes than midday as energy levels decreased and the day's labor had depleted physical reserves. Bread from morning baking supplemented with vegetables and perhaps small amounts of preserved fish or meat constituted typical evening meals. Cooking time shortened compared to midday preparations as households opted for foods requiring less effort to prepare after long working days. Leftovers from earlier meals could be incorporated to reduce the work needed at day's end when fatigue affected everyone. The meals served primarily to provide sustenance rather than to fulfill social or ceremonial functions within the household daily routine. Eating together marked the end of productive work for the day as family members gathered after their separate activities. Conversation remained limited as tiredness reduced the energy available for extended social interaction among household members after working hours. Children ate quickly and prepared for sleep soon after as their shorter stamina meant early bedtimes were necessary for rest. Adults lingered slightly longer but also moved towards sleep preparation relatively early as dawn would arrive again soon enough tomorrow. The evening meal represented a transition point between the active day and the restful night in the continuous daily cycle. Cleanup after eating required washing dishes and storing any remaining food safely away from insects and vermin that might contaminate it. Water from washing could be thrown into the street or saved for other cleaning purposes depending on its quality. Scraps went to animals if kept or to collection areas for disposal through whatever system operated in that particular neighborhood. The kitchen area was tidied and prepared for the next day's food preparation that would begin again with dawn's early arrival. Order restored allowed the household to shift focus to evening activities or sleep preparation as daylight faded away completely outside. Lamp lighting remained minimal due to cost of oil and risk of fire in closely built structures where flames could spread. Activities requiring light happened near windows during remaining daylight or ceased entirely until the next day brought natural illumination again. Some households maintained small lamps for necessary movement during night hours, but most darkness passed in sleep without artificial lighting. The rhythm of light and dark dictated activity patterns with rare exceptions for special circumstances requiring night work on occasion. Most people aligned their sleep schedules with natural darkness to conserve resources and reduce risks from open flames indoors. Bedtime preparations followed the same pattern as previous nights, with sleeping areas arranged and doors secured against entry during vulnerable nighttime hours. Blankets distributed according to individual needs and seasonal temperatures that varied throughout the year in predictable cycles recognized by everyone. Children settled first, with parents following after, ensuring the household was properly secured and prepared for night's passage through darkness. The sounds of the city quieted as most residents retired to sleep through the dark hours until dawn began anew. Occasional noises from late travelers or night workers punctuated the general silence, but most people slept undisturbed through the night. Sleep came easily after the day's physical exertion and mental activity depleted energy reserves, requiring restoration through rest and unconscious periods. Dreams came and went without memory upon waking in most cases, as the mind processed experiences beyond conscious direct awareness. The body repaired itself from daily wear and prepared for the coming day's demands through rest periods that occupied portions. Breathing deepened and muscles relaxed as consciousness faded, and the restorative processes of sleep engaged automatically without voluntary control being needed. The night passed in darkness as time continued its endless progression toward another dawn that would arrive inevitably soon enough. Morning light eventually appeared again as the sun rose, and the cycle repeated with the same activities in identical order. The pattern continued day after day with minor variations but fundamental sameness that characterized daily life for most city residents. Seasonal changes brought some differences in tasks and timing, but the basic structure of each day remained remarkably consistent across time. Generations passed, with children learning the same patterns their parents had learned and would pass to their own children in turn. The continuity of daily routine provided stability and predictability that ordered life and gave it recognizable rhythm despite historical changes slowly occurring. Streets filled again with people moving toward work locations or markets to conduct the day's necessary business and trade activities. Water carriers made their first trips to fountains as grinding stones began their morning work producing flour for household bread baking. The sounds of the city waking repeated the patterns of countless previous mornings in an unbroken chain extending backward through time. Each person moved through their established routines without need for conscious planning or decision-making about the sequence of required tasks. The day unfolded as days had unfolded before in patterns that continued regardless of individual awareness or particular participation levels. Household routines resumed their familiar patterns as people dressed and began food preparation and tended to immediate morning needs before other work. The coordination of activities within each household happened automatically after years of living together in shared spaces with established divisions. Children helped as they were able while adults managed more complex or physically demanding tasks requiring greater strength or skill. The morning progressed through its stages toward midday as the sun climbed higher and temperatures increased with each passing hour. Work continued as it always continued in the endless repetition of daily tasks that sustained household functioning and community operations overall. The cycle of daily tasks repeated with the same motions performed in the same spaces using the same tools passed down. Grinding grain continued each morning with the same circular motions that had been used for countless previous mornings in succession. The weight of the upper stone remained constant as did the effort required to move it across the lower surface. Flour accumulated at the same rate and required gathering in the same manner into the same types of storage vessels. The sound of grinding filled the same morning hours and mingled with the same sounds from neighboring households performing identical tasks. Water vessels were carried along the same paths to the same fountains where the same people gathered at similar times. The conversations at fountains covered similar topics with slight variations in the specific details being discussed on any given day. The weight of filled vessels felt the same in the arms and on the shoulders during each return journey to dwellings. Stairs were climbed with the same careful steps to avoid spilling water that represented the same effort to collect and transport. The water poured into the same storage containers kept in the same locations within household living spaces for daily use. Bread dough was mixed with the same proportions and kneaded with the same motions until it achieved the same consistency. The rising time remained similar from one day to the next under comparable temperature and humidity conditions in the environment. Ovens were heated to similar temperatures using similar amounts of fuel gathered from similar sources available in the area. Loaves were shaped with the same hand movements and placed in ovens using the same wooden boards for transport purposes. Baking proceeded for similar durations and produced bread of similar texture and flavor for household consumption throughout the day. Morning meals consisted of similar combinations of bread and other items available from storage or fresh from recent market purchases. Eating happened at similar times and involved similar portions distributed among household members according to established patterns of allocation. Dishes were washed using similar methods and similar amounts of water after each meal concluded and people prepared to resume work. The pattern of meal preparation and consumption repeated with such regularity that variation became notable when it occurred on rare occasions. Afternoon work resumed with the same tasks performed in the same locations using the same techniques learned through years of practice. Craftspeople worked on items similar to those they had produced on previous days using similar materials and similar tools for shaping. Market vendors sold similar goods at similar prices to similar customers who returned regularly for their household supply needs. Streets carried similar flows of foot traffic as people moved between similar destinations for similar purposes throughout the afternoon hours. The rhythm of afternoon activity matched the rhythm of previous afternoons in its basic pattern and overall structure throughout. Laundry happened on designated days with similar loads of soiled garments washed using similar methods and similar cleaning substances available. The scrubbing motions remained the same and produced similar results in removing dirt and stains from fabric being cleaned. Rinsing required similar amounts of water and similar effort to wring excess moisture from washed items before hanging for drying. Drying times varied with weather conditions, but the basic process remained unchanged from one washing day to the next washing day. Clean garments were folded and stored in similar ways in similar locations within household storage areas for future use and wearing. Animal feeding followed similar schedules with similar types and amounts of food scattered for household chickens and other kept livestock. Water containers were refilled at similar intervals to ensure animals had adequate drinking water available throughout the day and night. Egg collection happened at similar times with similar yields depending on the number of laying hens maintained in household flocks. Pens required cleaning at similar intervals to maintain sanitary conditions and prevent disease from spreading among animals kept in close quarters. The routine of animal care varied little from day to day across the seasons of the year passing by. Tool maintenance involved similar inspection procedures to identify items needing sharpening or repair from wear during regular use in household work. Blades were sharpened using similar stones with similar motions until edges returned to similar levels of cutting effectiveness for continued service. Handles were checked for cracks or looseness and repaired or replaced using similar materials and similar attachment methods as had been used. The maintenance work prevented similar problems from developing and ensured tools remained functional for similar periods before requiring eventual full replacement. The attention to maintenance created similar patterns of tool lifespan and replacement throughout households and the community over time. Evening approached with similar changes in light quality and similar decreases in temperature as the sun descended toward the horizon. Market activity wound down in similar fashion as vendors secured their remaining goods and prepared to depart for their homes. Streets gradually emptied of the afternoon crowds as people returned to dwellings following similar routes they had taken countless times before. Shadows lengthened in similar patterns across building walls and street surfaces as the angle of sunlight changed with solar movement. The transition to evening felt similar to previous transitions and would feel similar to future transitions in the ongoing daily cycle. Evening meal preparation involved similar foods prepared in similar ways using similar cooking methods and similar amounts of fuel for heating. Bread from the morning was supplemented with similar items kept in storage or prepared fresh from available ingredients on hand. Cooking times remained similar for dishes that appeared regularly in the evening meal rotation throughout weeks and months passing. Family members gathered in similar configurations to eat similar portions from similar vessels used repeatedly for this purpose over time. The meal concluded in similar fashion with similar cleanup tasks performed in similar sequence before evening activities or sleep preparation began. Lamp use remained similarly minimal across most households due to similar concerns about cost and fire risk in similar living conditions. Evening activities continued only while natural light remained sufficient through windows or doorways, letting in the fading illumination from outside. Most households transitioned to sleep preparation as darkness deepened and visibility decreased to levels making activity difficult or impractical to continue. Children were settled into sleeping areas in similar order from youngest to oldest following patterns established within each household structure. Adults completed similar final checks of doors and fire safety before retiring to their own sleeping areas for the night. Sleep came at similar times and lasted for similar durations through the dark hours until morning light triggered waking once more. The quality of sleep varied with individual factors, but the overall pattern remained similar from night to night for most people. Dreams occurred in similar fashion, though their content varied and was rarely remembered upon waking to conscious awareness again. The body's restorative processes proceeded in similar manner each night, repairing similar types of wear from similar daily activities and exertions. Morning arrived with similar gradual increases in light and similar sounds of the city beginning to stir once more around. The new day began with similar stirring in households as people woke and prepared to begin similar morning routines once again. Dressing happened in similar order using similar garments selected from similar limited wardrobes kept in similar storage locations within dwellings. Morning preparations proceeded through similar stages of food preparation and water collection and household tidying before other work could begin. The coordination of morning tasks followed similar patterns learned through similar repetition over similar periods of living together in shared household spaces. Each morning resembled previous mornings in its basic structure and sequence of activities required before the day could properly commence. Market activity resumed with similar vendors appearing in similar locations to sell similar goods at similar times each operating day. Customers arrived in similar patterns seeking similar items for similar household purposes that repeated regularly throughout time passing by. Transactions proceeded in similar fashion with similar negotiations over similar price ranges for similar quantities of similar goods being exchanged. The flow of people through market areas followed similar routes and similar timing as buyers moved between similar stalls and vendors. Market sounds and smells remained similar from one operating day to the next operating day in the ongoing commercial cycle. Craftwork resumed in similar shops using similar tools and similar materials to produce similar items for similar customers and similar markets. The motions of shaping and forming remained similar as hands repeated similar actions learned through similar training periods over similar lengths. The products emerging from these similar efforts resembled previous products in similar ways while serving similar functions for similar users. The rhythm of craft production maintained similar steadiness from hour to hour and day to day throughout working periods. Each item produced joined similar items produced before in an ongoing stream of similar objects serving similar community needs continuously. Household tasks continued through similar patterns as established routines guided the sequence of activities performed throughout each day passing. Sweeping floors happened at similar intervals to remove similar accumulations of dust and debris tracked in from street surfaces outside. The broom moved in similar strokes across similar floor areas following similar paths that had been followed countless times previously. Dust collected in similar corners and along similar edges where it accumulated between similar sweeping sessions throughout each week. The task required similar amounts of time and similar physical effort regardless of how many times it had been performed before. Storage areas required similar attention to maintain organization and prevent similar problems from developing over time with accumulated items within. Items were checked for similar signs of damage or deterioration that could affect their usability for intended household purposes. Rearranging stored goods happened occasionally to improve access or accommodate new acquisitions added to household possessions over time gradually. The organization systems developed through similar trial and adjustment until similar functional arrangements emerged that served household needs adequately well. Maintaining these systems required similar ongoing attention to prevent similar disorder from developing through neglect or inattention to details. Clothing required similar inspection to identify items needing similar repairs before damage progressed to similar levels requiring replacement rather than mending. Small tears were stitched using similar needle and thread with similar stitching patterns that closed openings and prevented further damage. Worn areas were patched using similar fabric scraps saved from previous garments no longer serviceable for their original intended purposes. The repair work happened during similar intervals between other tasks when hands could work while attention focused elsewhere on other matters. Each repaired garment returned to similar service for similar additional periods before eventually requiring similar retirement from active household use. Food storage required similar monitoring to ensure similar preservation of items kept for similar future use in household meal preparation. Grain containers were checked for similar signs of moisture or insect infestation that could ruin similar quantities of stored household supplies. Oil vessels were examined for similar leaks or seal failures that could allow similar contamination or spoilage of precious stored contents. Dried items were inspected for similar mold growth or similar deterioration from improper storage conditions within household spaces available for this. The vigilance prevented similar losses and ensured similar availability of similar food supplies when needed for similar household meal requirements. Water storage vessels required similar cleaning at similar intervals to prevent similar buildup of residue that could affect water quality. Scrubbing the interior surfaces removed similar deposits using similar abrasive materials and similar amounts of effort applied during the cleaning. Rinsing thoroughly with clean water ensured similar removal of cleaning materials before vessels returned to similar service for household water storage. The maintenance of water vessels protected similar household health by preventing similar contamination from growing in storage containers between similar uses. Each cleaned vessel served similar functions for similar periods before requiring similar cleaning once more in the ongoing household maintenance cycle. Hearth areas required similar cleaning to remove similar ash buildup from cooking fires burned for similar household food preparation purposes. Ash was collected and disposed of in similar locations or saved for similar secondary uses in household operations when appropriate. The hearthstones were swept clean of similar debris before new fires were laid using similar fuel arrangements for similar cooking sessions. Maintaining clean hearth areas prevented similar fire hazards and ensured similar cooking efficiency during similar meal preparation activities throughout each day. The pattern of hearth maintenance repeated with similar regularity tied to similar cooking schedules maintained within each household structure routinely. Doorways required similar attention to maintain similar function and prevent similar wear on hinges and similar wooden surfaces receiving similar daily use. Hinges were checked for similar looseness and tightened or repaired using similar methods and similar tools available for maintenance work. Door surfaces were examined for similar cracks or similar damage from similar impacts or similar weather exposure over similar periods of time. The maintenance preserved similar door function and prevented similar security problems from developing through similar neglect of obvious deterioration over time. Each door received similar attention at similar intervals based on similar observed needs arising from similar usage patterns noticed daily. Window coverings required similar adjustments to maintain similar function in controlling similar light and similar airflow into household living spaces throughout. Shutters were checked for similar secure fastening and similar freedom of movement when opening or closing as needed for conditions. Fabric coverings were examined for similar tiers or similar wear that could reduce their similar effectiveness for intended similar purposes. The maintenance ensured similar comfort levels within household spaces regardless of similar external weather conditions affecting the surrounding environment outside. Each window covering received similar care based on similar needs arising from similar exposure to similar environmental factors over time. Sleeping areas required similar preparation each evening to ensure similar comfort for similar rest periods during similar night hours ahead. Bedding was arranged in similar configurations providing similar cushioning and similar covering appropriate to similar temperature conditions at that time. Sleeping surfaces were checked for similar problems that could affect similar sleep quality during similar overnight rest periods being anticipated. The preparation created similar conditions for similar sleep quality night after night following similar patterns that supported similar rest for household members. Each sleeping area received similar attention from those using it regularly throughout similar periods of household residence continuing over time. Courtyard areas required similar sweeping to remove similar fallen leaves and similar debris accumulating from similar environmental exposure throughout each day. Plants growing in courtyards received similar watering at similar intervals based on similar seasonal conditions affecting similar growth requirements for similar species. The ground surfaces were maintained in similar condition to prevent similar mud or similar dust problems from developing during similar weather variations. Courtyard maintenance created similar pleasant spaces for similar household activities occurring in these similar semi-outdoor areas regularly throughout similar daily routines. Each courtyard received similar attention appropriate to similar size and similar function within similar household operational patterns continuing daily. Walkways between rooms required similar attention to prevent similar obstacles from blocking similar passage during similar movement through household spaces. Items were returned to similar storage locations rather than being left in similar pathways where similar tripping hazards could develop. The floors along walkways were kept in similar clean condition to prevent similar slipping on similar spilled substances or similar tracked materials. Maintaining clear walkways ensured similar safe movement during similar daily activities and similar nighttime movement in similar reduced lighting conditions. Each walkway served similar functions connecting similar spaces used for similar purposes throughout similar household daily operations continuing routinely. Common areas used by multiple household members required similar organization to accommodate similar shared use for similar different activities throughout similar daily periods. Items belonging to different individuals were kept in similar designated locations to prevent similar confusion or similar conflict over similar usage. The spaces were arranged to allow similar multiple simultaneous activities when needed during similar busy household periods throughout the day. Maintaining organized common areas supported similar household harmony and similar functional efficiency during similar daily operations continuing without similar disruption from similar disorganization. Each common area served similar purposes for similar household members sharing similar living spaces together over similar extended periods. Private areas belonging to individual household members received similar respect regarding similar boundaries and similar personal possessions kept within those spaces. Entry to private areas followed similar household customs regarding similar permission and similar appropriate timing for similar interactions with similar occupants. The arrangement of items within private spaces remained similar personal choices made by similar occupants according to similar individual preferences. Respecting private areas maintained similar household relationships and similar trust among similar members sharing similar overall living spaces together daily. Each private area provided similar refuge and similar personal space within similar larger household structures supporting similar community living arrangements. Transitional spaces connecting household areas to external streets required similar maintenance to manage similar tracked materials from similar outside surfaces. Entry areas were swept with similar frequency to prevent similar accumulation of similar street dirt in similar interior household spaces beyond. Storage for similar outdoor items was maintained near similar entry points to prevent similar unnecessary carrying of similar soiled objects through similar clean interior areas. The management of transitional spaces protected similar interior cleanliness while accommodating similar necessary movement between similar inside and similar outside locations throughout similar daily household operations. Each transitional space served similar functions mediating between similar different environmental conditions in similar interior and similar exterior locations routinely. Lighting conditions varied throughout similar interior spaces based on similar window placement and similar time of day affecting similar natural illumination. Activities requiring similar good visibility were scheduled during similar periods when similar natural light was similar strongest through similar available openings. Tasks tolerating similar lower light conditions were performed during similar early morning or similar late afternoon when similar illumination decreased from similar peak levels. The coordination of activities with similar available light reduced similar need for similar costly artificial illumination while similar maintaining similar productivity throughout similar daylight hours. Each space within households received similar use patterns adapted to similar lighting conditions present at similar different times throughout similar daily cycles. Temperature conditions within household spaces varied with similar external weather patterns affecting similar interior comfort levels throughout similar daily periods. Warmer months required similar strategies to maintain similar cooler interior conditions during similar hottest portions of similar daily cycles. Opening shutters during similar cooler morning hours allowed similar fresh air circulation before similar midday heat made similar closing necessary again. Closing openings during similar peak heat hours trapped similar cooler air inside and blocked similar hot external air from entering. The management of openings followed similar patterns learned through similar experience with similar local climate conditions affecting similar household comfort regularly. Cooler months required similar different strategies to maintain similar warmer interior conditions during similar coldest portions of similar seasonal cycles. Shutters remained closed during similar coldest periods to retain similar heat generated by similar cooking fires and similar other household activities. Opening shutters during similar warmer daylight hours allowed similar sun warming of similar interior spaces when similar external temperatures permitted safely. Bedding arrangements changed with similar seasons, adding similar additional layers during similar colder months and similar reducing layers during similar warmer periods. The seasonal adjustments followed similar patterns repeated through similar annual cycles year after year in similar predictable fashion, continuing routinely. Humidity levels affected similar household comfort and similar preservation of similar stored goods, requiring similar attention throughout similar varying conditions. Higher humidity periods required similar increased vigilance regarding similar mold growth on similar stored foods and similar fabric items kept within. Lower humidity periods created similar different concerns regarding similar excessive drying of similar wooden items and similar cracking of similar pottery surfaces. Managing humidity effects involved similar strategies developed through similar observation of similar seasonal patterns affecting similar household conditions over similar extended periods. Each household adapted similar practices to similar specific conditions present in similar particular locations and similar structural characteristics of similar dwellings occupied. Airflow through household spaces was managed using similar opening and closing of similar doors and similar windows based on similar desired effects. Creating cross-ventilation required similar opening of similar opposite openings to allow similar air movement through similar interior spaces between them. Blocking drafts required similar closing of similar openings that created similar unwanted air movement during similar cooler periods or similar windy conditions. The control of airflow supported similar temperature management and similar comfort maintenance throughout similar varying external conditions affecting similar households daily. Each dwelling had similar particular patterns of similar airflow based on similar specific arrangement of similar openings in similar walls and similar roofs. Noise levels from external sources affected similar household activities requiring similar varying degrees of similar quiet concentration or similar tolerance. Street noise during similar busy periods made similar conversation difficult and similar required speaking in similar louder voices to similar be heard. Quieter periods allowed similar normal conversation volumes and similar made similar sleeping easier during similar nighttime hours when similar activity decreased. Managing noise impacts involved similar scheduling of similar activities requiring similar concentration during similar quieter periods when similar possible practically speaking. Each household adapted to similar noise patterns characteristic of similar particular locations within similar urban areas experiencing similar different activity levels. Privacy within household spaces was maintained through similar arrangements of similar rooms and similar use of similar curtains or similar partitions when appropriate. Conversations requiring similar privacy happened in similar designated areas away from similar common spaces where similar others might overhear similar discussions. Personal activities occurred in similar private areas separated from similar shared spaces used for similar communal household functions throughout similar daily periods. The management of privacy supported similar household harmony by providing similar appropriate separation when similar needed while similar maintaining similar community during similar shared activities. Each household developed similar patterns of similar privacy and similar sharing based on similar specific family structures and similar cultural expectations present. Security of household possessions involved similar practices of similar locking doors and similar securing valuable items in similar designated storage locations. Items of similar value were kept in similar less accessible locations to reduce similar theft risk from similar external intruders or similar dishonest visitors. Doors were secured using similar locking mechanisms during similar nighttime hours and similar during similar extended absences from similar dwelling spaces throughout. The security practices provided similar protection while similar balancing similar need for similar reasonable access during similar normal household operations and similar social visiting. Each household maintained similar security measures appropriate to similar specific circumstances and similar local conditions affecting similar theft risks present. Social visiting between households followed similar patterns of similar expected behavior regarding similar timing and similar duration of similar visits conducted. Visits typically occurred during similar less busy periods when similar household work allowed similar time for similar social interaction without similar disrupting similar necessary activities. Guests were received in similar designated areas appropriate for similar social interaction separate from similar private household spaces used for similar personal activities. The hosting of visitors involved similar offering of similar refreshments and similar seating arrangements supporting similar comfortable conversation during similar visit periods. Each household maintained similar visiting customs consistent with similar broader community expectations regarding similar appropriate social interaction patterns between similar households. Gift exchanges between households marked similar special occasions and similar maintained similar social relationships through similar reciprocal giving over similar extended periods. Gifts typically consisted of similar household-produced items like similar food or similar craft objects rather than similar purchased goods from similar markets. The exchange created similar obligations for similar future reciprocation, maintaining similar ongoing relationships through similar cycles of similar giving and similar receiving over time. Managing gift relationships required similar awareness of similar previous exchanges and similar appropriate timing for similar reciprocal gifts, balancing similar social accounts. Each household tracked similar gift relationships through similar memory and similar social awareness rather than similar written records of similar exchange history. Seasonal festivals brought similar temporary changes to similar daily routines as similar households prepared for similar communal celebrations occurring at similar designated times. Preparation involved similar special food items and similar household cleaning beyond similar normal maintenance levels typically maintained throughout similar regular periods. Participation in festivals provided similar breaks from similar normal work patterns and similar opportunities for similar enhanced social interaction among similar community members. The festivals marked similar passage of similar seasons and similar provided similar temporal markers organizing similar annual cycles into similar recognizable segments. Each festival followed similar patterns established through similar tradition and similar repeated year after year in similar predictable fashion continuing. Religious observances occurred at similar regular intervals following similar ritual patterns performed by similar household members or similar community priests. Household shrines received similar regular attention with similar offerings made at similar appropriate times according to similar religious customs practiced. Participation in religious activities provided similar spiritual meaning and similar social cohesion within similar communities sharing similar belief systems and similar practices. The observances connected similar present activities to similar ancestral traditions extending backward through similar time beyond similar living memory of similar current practitioners. Each household maintained similar religious practices consistent with similar broader community traditions while similar allowing similar individual variations in similar specific implementations. Life transitions such as similar births and similar marriages and similar deaths were marked by similar ritual practices involving similar extended family and similar broader community participation. Births brought similar celebrations and similar introduced new members into similar household and similar community structures continuing over similar time ahead. Marriages created similar new household formations or similar joined individuals to similar existing household structures through similar negotiated arrangements between similar families involved. Deaths required similar mourning periods and similar funeral practices that similar honored deceased while similar supporting surviving household members through similar grief periods. Each transition followed similar established patterns providing similar structure during similar emotionally significant periods affecting similar household stability and similar continuity. Inheritance patterns determined similar transfer of similar household possessions and similar property from similar deceased to similar surviving family members according to similar established customs. Property typically passed to similar male heirs in similar established order based on similar birth sequence and similar family relationships to similar deceased. The transfer maintains similar household continuity and similar ensured similar ongoing occupation of similar dwelling spaces by similar family members across similar generations passing. Managing inheritance involved similar family discussions and sometimes similar conflicts requiring similar community intervention to similar resolve similar disputed claims. Each inheritance followed similar patterns while similar accounting for similar specific family circumstances affecting similar particular cases being resolved through similar customary processes. Economic exchanges between households involved similar trading of similar surplus goods and similar services maintaining similar interdependence within similar community structures continuing. Households producing similar surplus food items traded with similar craft-producing households creating similar mutual benefit through similar exchange of similar different goods. The exchanges happen through similar direct negotiation or similar through similar market intermediaries facilitating similar connections between similar producers and similar consumers of similar various goods. Managing economic relationships required similar maintaining similar reputation for similar honest dealing and similar producing similar quality goods supporting similar ongoing trade partnerships. Each household participated in similar economic networks connecting similar multiple households and similar complex webs of similar exchange relationships continuing over similar extended time periods. Knowledge transmission between generations occurred through similar observation and similar practice rather than similar formal instruction separated from similar actual work activities. Children watched similar adults performing similar tasks and similar gradually attempted similar simplified versions under similar supervision provided by similar experienced practitioners. Corrections happened during similar actual work performance rather than similar through separate teaching sessions dedicated to similar skill instruction alone. The learning process extended over similar years as similar skills developed through similar repeated practice and similar increasing responsibility for similar actual productive work. Each generation learned similar skills from similar previous generation maintaining similar continuity of similar knowledge across similar time passing forward continuously. Tool usage skills were acquired through similar gradual progression from similar observation to similar assisted use to similar independent operation under similar decreasing supervision. Young children watched similar tool use without similar touching tools themselves during similar earliest observation periods before similar any participation began. Older children held similar tools while similar adults guided similar movements teaching similar proper technique through similar physical direction of similar hands and similar arms. Eventually independent use began with similar simple tasks before similar progressing to similar more complex operations requiring similar greater skill and similar judgment. Each tool had similar learning progression appropriate to similar complexity and similar danger involved in similar its operation during similar normal work activities. Material properties were learned through similar handling and similar working with similar substances used in similar household production and similar craft activities regularly. Understanding how similar clay responded to similar water content came through similar repeated mixing and similar shaping during similar pottery work over similar extended periods. Learning how similar dough texture indicated similar proper kneading came through similar making bread repeatedly and similar observing similar results from similar different handling. Knowledge of similar wood grain and similar splitting characteristics developed through similar years of similar working with similar wooden materials for similar various purposes. Each material required similar extended experience before similar intuitive understanding developed supporting similar skilled work with similar that substance routinely. Seasonal patterns were learned through similar living through similar annual cycles and similar observing similar recurring changes in similar weather and similar plant growth. Understanding when similar crops needed similar planting came through similar observing similar seasonal markers and similar participating in similar planting activities year after similar year. Recognizing signs of similar coming weather changes developed through similar attention to similar sky conditions and similar wind patterns preceding similar storms or similar clear periods. The knowledge accumulated gradually over similar childhood years and similar continued developing throughout similar adult life with similar ongoing observation of similar natural patterns. Each person developed similar understanding appropriate to similar activities they performed and similar environments they inhabited throughout similar their lifetime. Social expectations were learned through similar participation in similar household and similar community activities where similar appropriate behavior was similar modeled and similar enforced. Children learned similar proper greetings and similar respectful address through similar observing similar adult interactions and similar being corrected when similar their behavior deviated. Understanding similar gift exchange obligations came through similar participating in similar giving and similar receiving and similar hearing similar adults discuss similar social relationships involved. Recognition of similar status differences emerged through similar observing similar how different people were similar treated in similar various social contexts encountered regularly. Each person internalized similar social knowledge through similar years of similar participation in similar community life and similar relationships with similar various community members. Work rhythms were established through similar daily repetition of similar tasks at similar regular times, creating similar bodily habits and similar expectations. Bodies learned to similar wake at similar dawn without similar external prompting after similar years of similar rising at similar that time consistently. Hunger arose at similar meal times reflecting similar established eating schedules rather than similar only physical need for similar nourishment at similar those moments. Tiredness came at similar evening hours when similar sleep typically occurred in similar daily cycles repeated throughout similar years of similar patterns. Each person's body adapted to similar rhythms established through similar their particular daily routine and similar social environment surrounding similar them continuously. Spatial knowledge of similar local area developed through similar repeated travel along similar same routes between similar home and similar work and similar market locations. Landmarks became familiar through similar passing them repeatedly until similar navigation required no similar conscious attention to similar route being followed. Understanding similar alternative paths emerged through similar occasional variations and similar gradual exploration of similar surrounding areas over similar extended residential periods. Knowledge of similar distances and similar travel times developed through similar experience rather than similar formal measurement of similar actual physical dimensions involved. Each person knew similar their local area through similar personal experience of similar moving through similar it regularly during similar daily activities continuing over similar years. Weather prediction abilities developed through similar observing similar sky conditions and similar their relationship to similar subsequent weather changes occurring within similar hours or similar days. Recognizing similar cloud formations associated with similar coming rain came through similar years of similar watching similar skies and similar noting similar patterns preceding similar precipitation. Understanding similar wind direction changes signaling similar weather shifts emerged through similar attention to similar such details and similar their similar correlations with similar subsequent conditions. The knowledge remained imprecise, but similar provided useful guidance for similar planning, similar outdoor work, and similar other activities affected by similar weather conditions. Each person developed similar weather sense appropriate to similar their particular location and similar its characteristic climate patterns present year after similar year. Time awareness functioned through similar recognition of similar sun position and similar shadow lengths rather than similar mechanical measurement of similar hours or similar minutes. Morning was similar early when similar sun rose and similar shadows were similar long stretching across similar ground surfaces from similar structures and similar objects. Midday arrived when similar sun reached similar highest point and similar shadows became similar shortest during similar daily solar progression across similar sky. Evening approached when similar sun descended and similar shadows lengthened again, indicating similar approaching darkness and similar end of similar working day. Each person judged similar time through similar such natural indicators rather than similar through any similar artificial timekeeping devices or similar systems. Physical stamina developed through similar years of similar performing similar physically demanding tasks, building similar strength and similar endurance for similar sustained work. Bodies adapted to similar loads carried regularly, becoming similar stronger and similar muscles used repeatedly during similar daily activities performed consistently. Tolerance for similar heat and similar cold increased through similar ongoing exposure to similar varying conditions throughout similar seasons passing in similar annual cycles. The conditioning happened gradually through similar actual work rather than similar through separate exercise programs designed for similar physical development alone. Each person's body reflected similar work they performed through similar muscle development and similar calluses and similar postural adaptations from similar years of similar repetitive movements. Manual dexterity improved through similar practice of similar fine motor tasks involved in similar craft work and similar food preparation activities performed daily. Hands learned similar precise movements required for similar threading needles and similar shaping pottery and similar cutting food into similar uniform pieces consistently. Finger strength developed for similar tasks like similar spinning thread and similar kneading dough and similar gripping tools firmly during similar use. The skills emerged slowly through similar thousands of similar repetitions over similar years of similar practice before similar skilled performance became similar automatic and similar required no similar conscious attention. Each person's hands reflected similar work they performed through similar particular patterns of similar calluses and similar muscle development and similar movement capabilities present. Memory capacity was employed for similar remembering similar oral instructions and similar traditional practices and similar social relationships within similar community structures maintained. Recalling similar plant properties and similar their uses required similar memory without similar written references to similar consult when similar information was similar needed. Remembering similar kinship relationships and similar social obligations involved similar keeping track of similar complex networks without similar written records to similar support similar memory. The memory skills were similar exercised daily through similar actual use rather than similar through formal memory training separate from similar practical applications. Each person's memory held similar information relevant to similar their particular roles and similar activities within similar household and similar community contexts they similar inhabited. Problem-solving abilities developed through similar encountering similar practical challenges during similar work and similar finding similar solutions through similar trial and similar experimentation over similar time. Learning how to similar adapt tools for similar different uses came through similar trying similar various approaches when similar standard tools proved similar inadequate for similar particular tasks. Understanding how to similar repair broken items emerged through similar examining similar damage and similar attempting similar various fixes until similar successful solutions appeared through similar experimentation. The abilities grew through similar actual problem encounters rather than similar through abstract training in similar general problem-solving methods divorced from similar practical contexts. Each person developed similar problem-solving skills appropriate to similar challenges they encountered in similar their particular work and similar life circumstances present. Aesthetic judgments formed through similar exposure to similar objects and similar practices considered similar beautiful or similar well-made within similar cultural contexts inhabited. Understanding what similar constituted good pottery came through similar seeing similar and similar handling similar many examples while similar learning similar community standards for similar quality work. Recognizing similar attractive fabric patterns emerged through similar exposure to similar various textiles and similar absorbing similar preferences expressed by similar community members consistently. The aesthetic sense developed through similar immersion in similar cultural environment rather than similar through formal instruction in similar beauty principles or similar artistic theory. Each person's aesthetic reflected similar community standards while similar allowing similar some individual variation within similar accepted ranges of similar taste. Daily maintenance of similar household items continued through similar regular inspection and similar repair of similar damage occurring through similar normal use over similar time. Checking similar tools for similar wear happened during similar cleaning after similar use when similar damage was similar most visible and similar easily addressed. Tightening similar loose joints in similar furniture prevented similar further damage from similar developing through similar continued use in similar weakened condition unnecessarily. Replacing similar worn cordage on similar beds and similar other items happened before similar complete failure created similar larger repair needs later. The maintenance pattern kept similar household items functioning through similar ongoing attention rather than similar waiting for similar complete failure requiring similar replacement. Storage organization required similar periodic review to similar ensure items remained similar accessible and similar protected from similar damage during similar storage periods. Rearranging similar stored goods happened when similar new items were similar added or similar when seasonal changes required similar different items for similar current use. Checking similar for insect damage in similar stored fabrics and similar foods prevented similar losses from similar going unnoticed until similar significant damage had similar occurred. Rotating similar stored items to similar use older goods first prevented similar spoilage of similar items kept similar too long beyond similar their usable period. Each household maintained similar storage systems adapted to similar their particular space constraints and similar possession quantities requiring similar accommodation within similar available areas. Furniture required similar occasional tightening of similar joints that loosened through similar normal use and similar the drying of similar wood over similar time passing. Checking similar stability of similar tables and similar benches and similar other pieces identified similar problems before similar use became similar unsafe or similar impossible. Repairing similar loose joints involved similar techniques using similar pegs or similar cordage to similar restore similar structural integrity to similar weakened pieces. Replacing similar damaged furniture happened rarely as similar repair was similar preferred when similar possible given similar effort involved in similar creating similar new pieces. Each piece of similar furniture received similar care appropriate to similar its use frequency and similar importance within similar household daily operations continuing. Walls required similar occasional repair where similar mud brick deteriorated from similar moisture exposure or similar physical impacts during similar normal household activities. Patching similar damaged areas involved similar mixing similar mud and similar applying it to similar fill similar gaps or similar holes developing in similar wall surfaces. Smoothing similar repairs to similar match similar surrounding wall texture maintained similar consistent appearance throughout similar interior spaces used regularly by similar household members. Allowing similar repairs to similar dry completely before similar resuming similar normal use of similar spaces prevented similar damage to similar fresh patches applied recently. Each wall section received similar attention based on similar observed damage rather than similar on regular schedule independent of similar actual condition present. Roofs required similar inspection for similar damage to similar thatch or similar reed covering that protected similar interior spaces from similar weather exposure outside. Checking similar roof condition happened after similar storms or similar strong winds that could similar dislodge similar covering materials from similar their positions. Replacing similar damaged sections prevented similar water entry during similar rains that could similar damage similar interior household possessions and similar structures below. Maintaining similar adequate roof coverage ensured similar continued protection and similar comfort within similar dwelling spaces throughout similar varying weather conditions encountered seasonally. Each roof required similar particular attention based on similar its construction type and similar exposure to similar weather conditions affecting similar its integrity. Floor surfaces required similar maintenance through similar regular sweeping and similar occasional resurfacing when similar wear created similar uneven areas or similar exposed underlying materials. Packed earth floors needed similar adding of similar fresh material and similar compacting to similar maintain similar level walking surfaces throughout similar use over time. Stone floors required similar checking for similar loose pieces and similar resetting them to similar prevent similar tripping hazards from similar developing through similar settling. The maintenance preserved similar floor function and similar safety during similar daily movement through similar household spaces used constantly throughout similar each day. Each floor type required similar particular maintenance approaches appropriate to similar materials used in similar its construction originally when similar dwelling was similar built. Doorways experienced similar heavy use and similar required similar attention to similar hinges and similar door surfaces showing similar wear from similar constant opening and similar closing. Lubricating similar hinges with similar oil or similar fat reduced similar friction and similar prevented similar squeaking during similar door operation throughout similar daily use. Repairing similar damaged door surfaces maintained similar security and similar weather protection that similar doors provided to similar household interior spaces throughout. Adjusting similar door fit within similar frames accommodated similar wood swelling or similar shrinking with similar humidity changes affecting similar materials seasonally over similar time. Each door received similar maintenance based on similar its use frequency and similar observed condition during similar regular household operations continuing daily. Windows required similar cleaning of similar openings and similar maintenance of similar shutters or similar other coverings used to similar control similar light and similar airflow through similar openings. Removing similar accumulated dust and similar debris from similar window areas improved similar visibility and similar airflow when similar openings were similar in use during similar appropriate times. Checking similar shutter operation ensured similar smooth opening and similar closing when similar weather conditions required similar adjustments to similar household environmental controls available. Repairing similar damaged shutters maintained similar their function in similar protecting similar interior spaces from similar weather and similar providing similar security during similar nighttime hours ahead. Each window received similar attention appropriate to similar its location and similar function within similar household daily operational patterns continuing. Courtyards required similar maintenance of similar ground surfaces and similar any plantings growing in similar these spaces used for similar various household activities regularly. Sweeping similar courtyard surfaces removed similar debris and similar maintained similar usable space for similar work activities and similar social gatherings happening in similar these areas. Watering similar plants growing in similar courtyards ensured similar their survival and similar continued contribution to similar household food supply or similar aesthetic environment. Repairing similar courtyard walls or similar other structures within similar these spaces maintained similar their function and similar appearance over similar time with similar use. Each courtyard served similar particular household functions and similar received similar maintenance supporting similar those specific uses continuing throughout similar daily routines. Drainage systems required similar periodic clearing of similar channels that carried similar water away from similar household areas during similar rain periods occurring seasonally. Checking similar drainage flow after similar rains identified similar blockages requiring similar clearing before similar next rain event could cause similar flooding problems. Removing similar accumulated debris from similar drainage channels maintained similar their capacity to similar handle similar water volumes during similar heavy precipitation events encountered occasionally. The maintenance prevented similar water damage to similar household structures and similar ensured similar proper function during similar wet periods affecting similar the area. Each drainage system required similar attention appropriate to similar local conditions and similar rainfall patterns characteristic of similar the particular location and similar season. Shared facilities used by similar multiple households required similar coordination of similar maintenance efforts among similar users benefiting from similar these common resources available. Public wells needed similar periodic cleaning and similar repair of similar structural elements that deteriorated through similar heavy use over similar extended periods. Common ovens required similar attention from similar users to similar maintain similar function and similar prevent similar damage from similar improper use or similar neglect. Organizing similar maintenance of similar shared facilities happened through similar informal coordination among similar regular users rather than similar through formal management systems. Each shared facility received similar care appropriate to similar its importance and similar the number of similar households depending on similar it for similar daily needs. Pathways between dwellings required similar maintenance to similar keep similar surfaces navigable during similar daily movement through similar residential areas and similar neighborhoods throughout. Filling similar holes or similar worn areas in similar pathways prevented similar tripping hazards from similar developing through similar heavy foot traffic over similar time passing. Clearing similar debris from similar pathways maintained similar usable width for similar passage with similar loads being similar carried between similar locations during similar daily activities. The maintenance happened through similar combination of similar individual household efforts and similar collective action by similar pathway users benefiting from similar improvements. Each pathway received similar attention based on similar use frequency and similar observed condition requiring similar intervention to similar maintain similar safe passage. Neighborhood wells required similar protecting of similar water quality through similar preventing similar contamination from similar nearby sources during similar daily use by similar multiple households. Maintaining similar clean areas around similar wells reduced similar dirt being similar tracked into similar water during similar collection activities by similar users drawing similar water. Covering similar wells when similar not in similar active use prevented similar debris and similar animals from similar falling into similar water supply stored below. Coordinating similar well maintenance among similar users ensured similar adequate attention without similar excessive burden on similar any single household using similar the facility. Each well served similar particular set of similar nearby households who similar shared similar responsibility for similar its upkeep and similar proper function. Community ovens required similar managing of similar use schedules and similar fuel contributions from similar households sharing similar these facilities for similar bread baking activities. Organizing similar baking times prevented similar conflicts over similar access during similar popular periods when similar multiple households needed similar oven use simultaneously for similar their baking. Collecting similar fuel contributions from similar users maintained similar adequate supply for similar heating similar ovens to similar proper temperatures during similar baking sessions scheduled throughout. Cleaning similar ovens after similar use periods ensured similar readiness for similar next users and similar maintained similar sanitary conditions within similar shared facilities. Each oven served similar particular group of similar households who similar coordinated similar its use and similar maintenance through similar informal arrangements among similar regular users. Public fountains required similar protection from similar damage and similar contamination, ensuring similar continued water availability for similar surrounding households depending on similar these sources. Preventing similar animals from similar drinking directly from similar fountain basins maintained similar water quality for similar human consumption and similar use in similar food preparation. Reporting similar fountain damage to similar responsible authorities ensured similar timely repairs, maintaining similar water flow to similar dependent neighborhoods throughout similar the area. Managing similar crowd flow during similar busy collection periods prevented similar conflicts and similar ensured similar orderly access for similar all users needing similar water supplies. Each fountain served similar particular neighborhood and similar received similar attention from similar users who similar benefited from similar its continued proper operation daily. Morning routines repeated with similar movements through similar spaces following similar sequences established through similar years of similar daily practice. Rising from similar sleeping areas happened at similar times marked by similar light levels entering through similar openings in similar dwelling walls. Arranging similar bedding after similar waking prepared similar sleeping areas for similar evening use later when similar darkness returned again at similar day's end. Moving through similar dwelling spaces followed similar paths worn by similar feet traveling similar routes countless times during similar previous mornings passing. Each movement connected to similar next movement in similar chains of similar actions requiring no similar conscious planning or similar deliberate thought. Dressing involved similar selecting garments from similar storage locations where they were similar kept between similar uses during similar previous days and similar nights. Pulling similar tunics over similar heads required similar familiar motions that similar bodies performed without similar needing to similar think about similar how to similar accomplish similar the task. Fastening similar sandals involved similar tying similar straps in similar patterns that similar fingers knew from similar years of similar performing similar the same similar action repeatedly. Adjusting similar clothing for similar comfort happened automatically as similar bodies made similar minor corrections to similar garment positions during similar normal movement throughout similar spaces. Each article of similar clothing occupied similar its place in similar the sequence of similar dressing that similar unfolded each similar morning in similar identical fashion. Food preparation began with similar assessing similar available ingredients stored in similar containers located in similar designated areas within similar dwelling spaces used regularly. Selecting similar items for similar morning meal involved similar checking similar quantities and similar condition of similar stored goods before similar beginning similar preparation activities. Gathering similar necessary tools for similar preparation happened through similar moving to similar locations where similar implements were similar kept between similar uses throughout similar daily cycles. Beginning similar actual preparation work followed similar patterns learned through similar countless repetitions of similar same tasks over similar years of similar household operations. Each preparation step led to similar next step in similar sequences that similar unfolded without similar requiring similar conscious decisions about similar what came similar next and similar the process. Grinding grain involved similar kneeling in similar familiar positions before similar grinding stones that similar occupied similar same locations for similar years of similar daily use. Adding similar grain between similar stones happened in similar measured amounts that similar experience had similar taught produced similar appropriate quantities of similar flour for similar household needs. Moving similar upper stones in similar circular patterns engaged similar muscles that similar had developed similar through years of similar performing similar the same similar motion repeatedly. Collecting similar flour from similar edges of similar grinding surfaces happened at similar intervals when similar accumulation reached similar amounts requiring similar gathering into similar storage vessels nearby. Each motion of similar grinding connected to similar rhythms established through similar long practice making similar the work similar proceed automatically without similar active attention. Water collection involved similar taking similar empty vessels from similar storage areas and similar carrying them along similar familiar paths to similar fountain locations nearby. Walking similar routes to similar water sources happened without similar conscious attention to similar directions, as similar feet knew similar the way from similar countless previous similar trips. Waiting similar turns at similar fountains involved similar standing in similar positions among similar other users who similar appeared at similar regular times each similar morning for similar their water. Filling similar vessels under similar flowing water took similar familiar amounts of similar time based on similar vessel sizes and similar water flow rates encountered regularly. Each step of similar water collection followed similar patterns that similar required no similar planning, as similar the sequence similar unfolded automatically through similar established habit. Returning similar home with similar water involved similar carrying similar filled vessels along similar same paths, just similar traveled in similar opposite direction moments similar before. Balancing similar vessel weight on similar shoulders or similar hips engaged similar muscles trained through similar years of similar carrying similar loads in similar the same similar manner. Climbing similar stairs to similar dwelling areas happened with similar careful attention to similar footing despite similar familiarity with similar each step from similar daily use over similar time. Placing similar filled vessels in similar storage locations completed similar the cycle of similar water collection that similar would repeat similar later when similar household supplies required similar replenishing again. Each trip mirrored similar previous trips in similar its basic similar pattern and similar sequence of similar actions performed. Bread making proceeded through similar stages of similar mixing and similar kneading and similar rising that similar occurred in similar same order each similar time the similar work was similar performed. Combining similar flour and similar water in similar appropriate proportions happened through similar experience rather than similar through any similar measurement beyond similar what hands similar and similar eyes similar judged adequate for similar household needs. Kneading similar dough involved similar pressing and similar folding in similar rhythmic patterns that similar hands performed while similar attention wandered to similar other thoughts or similar observations. Covering similar dough for similar rising and similar setting it similar aside allowed similar other work to similar proceed while similar fermentation happened without similar requiring similar active involvement. Each stage of similar bread making connected to similar what came similar before and similar what would similar come after in similar sequences established through similar long practice. Oven preparation involved similar arranging similar fuel and similar lighting similar fires that similar would heat similar baking surfaces to similar temperatures needed for similar cooking bread properly. Judging similar when ovens reached similar proper heat levels came from similar observing similar fire behavior and similar feeling similar heat radiating from similar oven structures during similar heating periods. Maintaining similar heat during similar baking required similar adding similar fuel at similar appropriate intervals to similar sustained similar temperatures without similar allowing similar excessive cooling or similar overheating to similar occur. Monitoring similar baking progress happened through similar observing similar bread color and similar smelling similar aromas indicating similar stages of similar doneness being similar reached gradually. Each aspect of similar oven use reflected similar knowledge gained through similar years of similar working with similar particular ovens and similar their characteristic similar behaviors. Shaping similar loaves involved similar dividing similar risen dough into similar portions and similar forming similar them into similar rounds or similar other shapes through similar quick hand similar movements. Placing similar shaped loaves on similar boards for similar transport to similar ovens happened in similar organized fashion allowing similar efficient movement of similar multiple loaves to similar baking areas. Transferring similar loaves to similar hot oven surfaces required similar care to similar avoid burns while similar working quickly to similar minimize similar heat loss from similar opened ovens. Spacing similar loaves appropriately on similar baking surfaces ensured similar even heating and similar prevented similar loaves from similar touching during similar baking when similar they expanded slightly. Each motion of similar loaf handling reflected similar practiced efficiency developed through similar countless repetitions of these same similar actions. Baking times were similar judged through similar experience rather than similar through any similar mechanical measurement of similar minutes or similar hours passing during the process. Checking similar bread progress involved similar observing similar color changes and similar listening for similar sounds when similar tapping similar crusts lightly with similar fingers. Removing similar finished loaves from similar heat required similar using similar tools or similar cloths to similar protect hands from similar hot surfaces and similar hot bread. Placing similar baked loaves on similar cooling surfaces allowed similar steam to similar escape while similar crusts hardened to similar proper texture for similar household use. Each baking session followed similar patterns established through similar regular practice making similar the work similar feel automatic and similar requiring little similar conscious thought. Cooling bread required similar arranging loaves in similar locations where similar air could similar circulate around similar them during similar the cooling similar period needed. Checking similar loaves periodically ensured similar adequate cooling had similar occurred before similar storing or similar consuming similar the bread made that similar morning. Storing similar cooled bread involved similar placing loaves in similar covered containers or similar wrapping them to similar protect from similar dust and similar insects during similar storage periods. Planning similar bread storage accounted for similar expected consumption rates and similar the time similar until next similar baking session would similar produce similar fresh bread again. Each loaf moved through similar stages from similar mixing to similar storage in similar sequences that similar repeated with similar each baking similar cycle. Meal preparation continued with similar other items being similar prepared alongside similar bread to similar create similar complete meals for similar household consumption that similar day. Cutting similar vegetables involved similar repetitive motions with similar knives moving through similar items in similar practiced patterns requiring little similar attention. Cooking similar vegetables or similar other items happened in similar pots placed over similar fires at similar appropriate heat levels for similar particular dishes. Stirring similar cooking food prevented similar burning and similar ensured similar even heating throughout similar pots during similar cooking periods required for similar different items. Each dish prepared followed similar methods used similar previously making similar the work similar proceed smoothly through similar established routines. Serving similar food involved similar distributing similar portions to similar household members in similar amounts appropriate to similar their ages and similar their work demands that similar day. Using similar serving implements transferred similar food from similar cooking vessels to similar individual eating similar bowls or similar plates used regularly for similar meals. Eating similar together or similar separately happened according to similar household customs and similar the demands of similar ongoing work requiring similar attention during similar meal times. Consuming similar food provided similar necessary energy for similar continuing work while similar also offering similar brief respite from similar physical labor throughout similar the day. Each meal followed similar patterns in similar its preparation and similar consumption that similar varied little from similar one day to similar the next similar day. Cleanup after similar eating involved similar washing similar dishes and similar implements used during similar meal preparation and similar consumption just similar completed moments similar before. Scrubbing similar vessels with similar water and similar perhaps similar sand or similar other abrasives removed similar food residues clinging to similar surfaces. Rinsing similar cleaned items in similar fresh water removed similar cleaning materials before similar dishes were similar returned to similar storage locations for similar next use. Drying similar some items before similar storage prevented similar water damage or similar encouraged similar quick drying in similar or during similar storage periods ahead. Each item moved through similar cleaning process in similar turn until similar all implements were similar ready for similar their next similar use in similar future meals. Afternoon activities resumed with tasks requiring attention following the completion of morning work and midday meal periods just finished. Moving to work areas involved walking through spaces now familiar from years of daily passage between dwelling and labor locations. Hands reached for tools kept in designated places where they rested between uses during previous work sessions completed earlier. Beginning work engaged muscles and movements trained through countless repetitions of these actions over extended periods of practice. Each task connected to knowledge accumulated through years of performing these operations in consistent patterns established long ago. Craftwork proceeded through stages of preparation and execution that unfolded in sequences learned through observation and guided practice during training. Selecting materials for current projects involved assessing stored supplies and choosing items appropriate for intended purposes being undertaken today. Arranging work surfaces with needed implements created efficient layouts supporting smooth workflow during production periods extending through afternoon hours. Starting actual production work engaged attention in ways that allowed time to pass without conscious awareness of its steady progression. Each piece created reflected skills developed through years of working with particular materials and mastering specific techniques required. Market areas maintained activity levels through afternoon periods, though crowds had thinned from morning peak times when selection was freshest. Vendors continued calling their offerings in phrases repeated so often that words emerged without conscious formulation or deliberate thought about content. Customers moved between stalls examining goods and negotiating prices according to established patterns of commercial interaction practiced here regularly. Transactions concluded with exchanges of coins or goods and brief acknowledgments between parties before customers moved onward to other purchases. Each exchange resembled countless previous exchanges in basic structure while varying in specific items and amounts being transferred today. Public spaces hosted various activities as different groups used these areas for purposes ranging from commerce to social gathering. Children played games using simple objects found or fashioned from available materials in their immediate environment around them. Elderly residents sat watching activity flow past while conversing with others who paused during their movements through these shared spaces. Workers passed through carrying tools or materials between locations where different stages of their labor occurred throughout the working day. Each person occupied these spaces in ways that reflected their age and role and current needs within ongoing daily rhythms. Animals moved through streets either freely or under guidance of handlers directing them toward destinations for work or sale or slaughter. Chickens scratched at ground surfaces seeking food scraps dropped or discarded by people eating or preparing meals in nearby areas. Dogs wandered searching for food or followed owners who fed them scraps in exchange for companionship or guarding services provided. Cattle pulled carts or plows when directed by handlers who controlled their movement through commands learned during training periods earlier. Each animal contributed to the life and activity of urban spaces in ways shaped by human purposes and needs. Waste accumulated in streets and required periodic removal, though the volume often exceeded capacity for regular complete cleaning of all areas. Organic materials decomposed or were consumed by animals foraging through refuse seeking anything edible among the discarded items present. Broken pottery shards and other non-organic waste remained until swept aside or ground into smaller pieces by traffic passing repeatedly over them. Channels carried some liquid wastes away from areas where they were generated toward collection points or natural drainage routes beyond. Each type of refuse followed different paths based on its nature and the handling it received from residents and cleaners. Weather conditions affected outdoor activities and the comfort of those working in exposed locations during afternoon hours under full sun. Heat increased through midday and into early afternoon before beginning gradual decrease as evening approached with setting sun lowering toward horizon. Wind patterns shifted with time of day, bringing cooler air from certain directions during particular hours of daily cycles experienced repeatedly. Cloud cover varied day to day, affecting both temperature and light levels available for outdoor work requiring good visibility to proceed. Each day brought particular combinations of weather factors that influenced but did not fundamentally alter the basic rhythm of activities continuing. Shadows lengthened as afternoon progressed and sun descended gradually toward western horizon, marking passage toward evening hours ahead. The angle of light changed, creating different patterns of illumination and shade across building surfaces and street areas used by residents. Temperatures began decreasing from peak afternoon levels as direct solar heating diminished with sun's lower position in sky above. Activity patterns shifted subtly as people anticipated approaching evening and began mental preparation for transition to nighttime routines ahead soon. Each afternoon followed this pattern of gradual change, leading toward eventual darkness and rest periods that would follow eating. Work pace slowed somewhat as afternoon wore on and physical fatigue accumulated from hours of sustained labor already performed that day. Attention to quality remained important, but the speed of production decreased as bodies tired and required more frequent brief rests. Conversations among workers increased as energy for purely physical labor declined, while social interaction required less demanding physical exertion to maintain. Planning for completion of current tasks and preparation for next day's work began occupying thoughts as the workday drew toward conclusion. Each worker managed their declining energy according to personal patterns and the demands of tasks currently occupying their hands and attention. Tool cleaning began during late afternoon as work sessions approached completion and implements required preparation for storage until next use. Removing accumulated materials from cutting surfaces and working edges maintained tools in proper condition for effective future use when needed. Checking for damage or excessive wear identified problems requiring repair. Attention before next work session would begin tomorrow or later. Storing clean tools in designated locations ensured they would be readily available when work resumed during future periods ahead soon. Each tool received appropriate care based on its construction and the nature of work it performed during regular use cycles. Workshop cleaning removed accumulated debris from work areas and organized materials for storage until next production session would commence later. Sweeping floors gathered scraps and dust into piles for disposal or potential reuse if materials retained any value or utility. Covering work surfaces or stored materials protected them from dust accumulation and moisture exposure during periods between active work sessions. Securing workshops against entry prevented theft or damage to tools and materials stored within these spaces overnight while unattended. Each workspace received end-of-day attention appropriate to materials and equipment present within these production areas used regularly. Travel homeward began for those whose work occurred in locations separate from their dwelling spaces used for living and sleeping. Routes followed familiar paths through streets and between buildings, connecting work locations to residential areas where families gathered for evenings. Carrying tools or products or materials happened according to what needed transport between locations for various purposes related to work continuing. Meeting neighbors and acquaintances along routes provided opportunities for brief social interactions during travel periods between distinct life spaces. Each journey home marked transition from work identity to household identity and the different activities those roles entailed regularly. Entering dwelling spaces involved depositing work items in appropriate storage locations before shifting attention to household activities and evening routines. Washing hands and face removed accumulated dirt and sweat from work hours, providing physical and psychological transition between work and home. Changing clothing from work garments to different tunics marked the shift between contexts and the roles appropriate to each setting. Greeting family members reconnected household relationships after hours of separation during individual work and activities conducted apart from each other. Each return home followed established patterns that marked boundaries between different aspects of daily life and identity. Evening meal preparation began with assessing available food supplies and planning dishes requiring cooking for household consumption that evening soon. Simpler preparations than midday meals reflected reduced energy levels and the approaching darkness that would limit available working time ahead. Using leftovers from earlier meals reduced the amount of new cooking required while still providing adequate nutrition for household members present. Lighting fires for cooking happened with practiced efficiency developed through years of performing this task during countless previous evening meal preparations. Each meal emerged from available ingredients and established household preferences balanced against energy available for preparation work at day's end. Cooking proceeded with attention to heat management and timing despite fatigue affecting speed and precision of movements during preparation work. Stirring and monitoring prevented burning while ensuring adequate cooking for food safety and palatability during consumption soon to follow. Tasting dishes during cooking allowed adjustment of seasonings and checking doneness of various components being prepared simultaneously on heat sources. Coordinating completion of different dishes to finish together required mental tracking of multiple processes occurring at different rates throughout. Each cook managed these demands according to personal style and the specific dishes being prepared for that particular evening meal. Setting out food for consumption involved arranging prepared dishes in serving vessels and gathering household members for the communal or individual eating. Distributing portions according to age and work demands and hunger levels present ensured adequate nutrition while respecting established household hierarchies. Beginning eating marked the achievement of another day's sustenance and the satisfaction of immediate hunger after hours of physical work. Consuming food together provided opportunity for brief family interaction before darkness and fatigue led towards sleep preparations ahead soon. Each meal served both physical and social functions within the rhythm of household life continuing daily without interruption. Evening darkness approached gradually as sunlight faded and shadows merged into general dimness spreading across dwelling spaces and streets. Activities requiring good visibility concluded or moved closer to doorways where remaining natural light lingered for brief periods before vanishing. Conversations continued in dimming spaces as voices replaced visual contact for communication between household members gathering after the workday. Preparing sleeping areas began while enough light remained to arrange bedding and ensure spaces were ready for nighttime rest ahead. Each household shifted attention from outward activities to inward preparation for the night hours approaching with gathering darkness outside. Lamp lighting remained minimal in most dwellings due to expensive oil and constant awareness of fire hazards present. Small flames provided just enough illumination for essential movements through spaces when necessary during dark hours of night ahead. Positioning lamps carefully in stable locations reduced risk of accidental tipping that could spread fire through dwelling spaces rapidly. Extinguishing lamps happened as soon as their light was no longer needed for immediate tasks requiring visibility beyond what darkness allowed. Each flame represented both utility and danger requiring constant attention and respect from those living in structures vulnerable to burning. Children settled into sleeping spaces first as their energy depleted earlier than adults who had built greater stamina over years. Arranging blankets and ensuring comfort for young sleepers occupied parental attention during these transition moments between waking and sleeping states. Quiet voices soothed restless children while darkness deepened and the sounds of the city gradually diminished outside dwelling walls around them. Sleep came quickly for tired young bodies that had played and worked through the long day now ending with nightfall. Each child followed patterns established through countless previous evenings in these same spaces with these same familiar presences nearby providing security. Adults completed final tasks before retiring themselves to sleeping areas arranged earlier during the evening preparations for night rest. Checking that doors were secured and fire hazards minimized provided reassurance before releasing conscious control to sleep's unconscious state ahead. Mental review of the next day's anticipated tasks occupied thoughts briefly before fatigue overwhelmed planning and drew minds toward rest. Settling into sleeping positions that bodies had learned provided comfort through years of use in these same spaces nightly. Each person released the day's concerns and allowed exhaustion to carry them into sleep's restorative darkness awaiting them now. Night sounds replaced day sounds as different creatures and activities emerged, with darkness covering streets and dwelling spaces throughout. Occasional voices carried through darkness from late workers or travelers still moving through streets toward destinations not yet reached today. Dogs barked at disturbances real or imagined, while cats moved silently, hunting rodents active during nighttime hours when fewer people moved. Wind moving through structures and vegetation created sounds that formed the ambient background of nighttime hours, passing slowly through darkness. Each sound carried through air made more noticeable by the absence of daytime noise that usually masked these quieter elements. Sleep deepened for most residents as exhaustion from physical labor claimed consciousness and bodies began repair processes that occurred during rest. Breathing slowed and steadied into rhythms characteristic of deep sleep states when awareness of external surroundings faded almost completely away. Dreams occurred in minds processing the day's experiences and concerns through imagery and narratives rarely remembered upon waking later. Bodies shifted, occasionally seeking more comfortable positions, but largely remained still through long stretches of uninterrupted sleep continuing through night. Each sleeper passed through cycles of deeper and lighter sleep stages that unfolded automatically without conscious direction or awareness during passage. Night watch activities continued for those few whose work required remaining wakeful during hours when most others slept soundly. Guards walked assigned routes, checking for fires or intruders that threatened sleeping households, vulnerable during nighttime darkness and stillness present. The isolation of night watch duty provided time for thoughts and observations unavailable during busier daytime hours filled with activity. Monitoring the sleeping city required attention to subtle changes and unusual sounds that might indicate problems developing somewhere in darkness. Each watcher moved through their rounds following established patterns while remaining alert to variations from expected conditions requiring response or investigation. Pre-dawn hours brought gradual stirring among early risers who began days before full light arrived to illuminate working spaces. Movement in darkness required careful attention to familiar layouts and avoiding obstacles not visible in remaining nighttime conditions present still. Beginning fire lighting and water heating prepared for morning meal activities that would commence as light levels increased with approaching dawn. The quiet of pre-dawn allowed focused work without the distractions that would arise once full household activity began with day's arrival. Each early morning task proceeded in careful, deliberate manner suited to working in limited visibility conditions still present temporarily now. Dawn light appeared first as faint brightening along eastern horizon, gradually growing stronger as sun approached its daily rising above land. Colors emerged slowly from darkness as increasing illumination revealed details invisible during the night hours just concluding moments before. Birds began calling as light triggered their daily routines of seeking food and defending territories claimed during previous seasons past. People stirred in dwelling spaces as light entering through openings signaled the appropriate time for rising and beginning new day's activities. Each dawn followed the same pattern of gradual illumination spreading across landscape and signaling the start of another daily cycle beginning. Morning routines resumed as they had resumed countless times before, following patterns so established they required minimal conscious thought to execute. Bodies moved through familiar sequences of dressing and food preparation and initial household tasks that structured every morning identically to previous ones. Conversation remained limited during early hours as people focused on necessary preparations before full energy and social engagement became available later. The coordination of multiple household members performing different tasks simultaneously happened automatically through long practice living together in shared spaces daily. Each morning unfolded according to internal rhythms synchronized with external light cues signaling appropriate timing for various activities throughout. Grinding stones began their daily work as hands pushed them through circular motions that crushed grain into flour once more. The sound marked another morning beginning as it marked every morning in residential areas throughout the city where this work occurred. Flour accumulated around stone edges requiring gathering into storage vessels before continuing with additional grinding to produce needed quantities for baking. The physical effort engaged muscles strengthened through years of performing this same motion during countless previous mornings stretching back through time. Each grinding session resembled every previous session in its basic nature while representing another instance of necessary work sustaining household food production. Water collection began with taking vessels from storage and departing toward fountain locations where supplies could be obtained for daily needs. Walking routes to water sources happened automatically as feet followed paths worn into habit through repeated daily travel over years of residence. Meeting others at fountains created predictable social encounters that varied only in minor details of conversation while maintaining consistent basic interactions. Filling vessels and returning home with water completed the cycle that would repeat multiple times through the day as household needs arose. Each water collection trip mirrored previous trips in fundamental structure while representing another necessary instance of resource gathering for survival. Bread making proceeded through its established stages of mixing and kneading and rising that structured this work into predictable phases. Hands worked dough automatically while minds wandered to other thoughts or observations about household matters requiring attention later today. Covering dough to rise provided interval for other tasks while fermentation processes occurred without requiring active involvement or supervision during waiting. Shaping loaves when rising completed engaged hands in familiar motions learned through years of producing bread for household consumption regularly. Each baking day followed the same sequence while producing the staff of life-sustaining household members through another day ahead. Ovens heated to baking temperatures as fuel burned and hot surfaces prepared to receive shaped loaves awaiting cooking into finished bread. Monitoring heat levels through observation and experience ensured proper temperature without benefit of measuring devices indicating exact conditions present within. Placing loaves carefully into heated ovens required quick movements minimizing heat loss while protecting hands from burns during this transfer process. Baking proceeded according to familiar timing learned through experience rather than through mechanical measurement of minutes passing during the process. Each baking session produced bread through methods unchanged over generations of household food production continuing without significant variation over time. Morning meals provided first sustenance of the day, breaking overnight fasting periods with bread and other simple items available readily. Eating happened quickly as work awaited attention and the day's tasks required beginning soon after minimal food consumption provided needed energy. Cleanup from breakfast was brief given the simple nature of morning meals that rarely involved elaborate preparation or numerous dishes. Beginning work followed naturally after eating as bodies energized by food moved into labor that would occupy most hours until evening. Each morning meal served its functional purpose of fueling bodies for work without ceremony or extended social interaction during consumption. Work rhythms established themselves as tasks began and bodies settled into familiar motions performed countless times during previous work sessions over years. Repetitive actions engaged muscles trained specifically for these movements through regular daily practice continuing without interruption across seasons passing by. Attention focused on work quality and progress while time passed unmarked except by changing light and gradually accumulating fatigue in working muscles. The steady pace of work continued until breaks became necessary for brief rest or meals that punctuated longer working periods extending through daylight. Each work session resembled previous sessions in its basic rhythm while representing another instance of productive labor sustaining household and community functioning. Midday approached with increasing heat and brightness marking the transition from morning work to the brief rest period accompanying the main meal. Anticipation of food and respite from labor created subtle shifts in work pace as bodies and minds oriented toward the coming break. Completing current tasks before stopping allowed clean breaks in workflow rather than leaving operations half-finished and requiring reorientation later when resuming. Moving toward eating areas involved washing away accumulated dirt and sweat from morning exertions in fields or workshops or household spaces where labor occurred. Each midday pause represented a predictable marker dividing the day into recognizable segments that structured time's passage through regular intervals. Eating at midday provided both nutrition and brief social connection among household members who had been dispersed to various tasks through morning hours. Food consumed reflected available supplies and energy invested in preparation balanced against time available before afternoon work needed to resume again. Portions distributed according to who had worked hardest and who would face most demanding afternoon tasks requiring sustained physical exertion ahead. Conversation touched on practical matters related to work progress and afternoon plans requiring coordination among household members present now together. Each meal gathered people briefly before scattering them again to separate activities that would occupy them until evening brought another gathering. Afternoon heat intensified, making outdoor labor more taxing and requiring adjustments in work pace to sustainable levels for extended periods. Seeking shade when possible provided relief from direct sun exposure that could exhaust workers and impair their ability to continue safely. Drinking water frequently prevented the dangers of excessive fluid loss through sweat produced during physical exertion in elevated temperatures present. Rest breaks increased in frequency during hottest hours, allowing bodies to recover sufficiently before resuming work that still required completion today. Each hot afternoon demanded respect for physical limits while still maintaining progress on necessary tasks that could not be indefinitely postponed. Craft work continued through afternoon hours, with production progressing through established stages toward completion of items being made currently now. Hand-shaped materials through motions refined over years of practice until movements flowed without requiring conscious direction of each action. Judging quality and making adjustments happened through accumulated experience rather than through external standards or measurements applied systematically to work. Pride in workmanship motivated attention to details that distinguished adequate work from excellent work appreciated by those who would use items. Each piece produced represented both economic necessity and personal satisfaction in skills mastered through dedication to craft over extended training periods. Market transactions continued at slower pace as afternoon heat discouraged extensive shopping and most households had completed main purchasing during cooler morning periods. Remaining vendors hoped to sell perishables before day's end rather than face spoilage of unsold goods overnight before next market day. Buyers seeking bargains waited until late afternoon when prices might drop as sellers became motivated to clear remaining inventory at reduced returns. The rhythm of negotiation remained constant, though urgency increased as closing time approached and opportunities for sale would vanish until next trading day. Each transaction concluded with exchanges that sustained both vendor livelihoods and household supplies through this ongoing commercial relationship maintained over time. Street activity maintained steady flow as people moved between locations for various purposes related to work or household needs requiring attention now. Delivery workers carried goods from production sites to customers who had ordered items for purposes related to their own activities. Messengers moved between locations conveying information that could not wait for slower written communication methods to deliver news or instructions needed. Children ran errands for households, sending them to fetch items or deliver messages to others living nearby in the same neighborhood areas. Each person moving through streets contributed to the constant activity that characterized urban life during daytime hours when work continued everywhere. Animals continued their roles in urban systems, with working animals pulling loads and food animals providing resources for human consumption needs. Oxen strained against yokes pulling carts loaded with construction materials or trade goods moving between different locations within the city. Donkeys carried smaller loads along narrower passages where larger animals could not navigate through crowded or restricted street areas present throughout. Chickens and other fowl scratched in courtyards and alleys seeking food while producing eggs that supplemented household food supplies regularly available. Each animal served purposes that made human life and work possible at scales beyond what human labor alone could achieve practically. Waste continued accumulating in streets and spaces between buildings where disposal happened informally without organized collection systems serving all areas equally. Organic waste decomposed or was consumed by scavenging animals, reducing volume while creating odors characteristic of urban areas densely populated by people. Broken items discarded when repair became impractical added to accumulations of non-organic materials littering spaces not regularly cleaned by authorities. Liquid wastes flowed through channels when present or pooled in low areas, creating unsanitary conditions that residents learned to navigate around. Each type of waste contributed to the complex urban environment where cleanliness competed with practical limitations on removal and disposal capacity. Building maintenance occurred sporadically as damage became severe enough to demand attention before structures became unusable or dangerous for occupants. Repairing roofs before rainy seasons arrived prevented water damage to interior spaces and stored goods vulnerable to moisture exposure during storms. Reinforcing walls showing cracks prevented collapse that could injure residents or destroy household possessions kept within dwelling spaces now weakening. Clearing drainage channels ensured water would flow away from structures during rains rather than pooling against walls and foundations, causing gradual deterioration. Each maintenance action addressed immediate problems while deferring other issues that had not yet reached critical urgency, demanding intervention now. Social relationships maintained themselves through ongoing interactions during work and market visits and casual encounters in shared public spaces throughout. Greeting acquaintances acknowledged mutual recognition and maintained friendly relations that might prove useful when future needs arose requiring assistance or cooperation. Exchanging news kept people informed about events affecting the community and provided topics for conversation that reinforced social bonds over time. Offering help to neighbors in difficulty built reciprocal obligations that created safety nets when one's own household faced challenges requiring outside support. Each interaction contributed to social fabric, binding community members together through networks of mutual obligation and shared identity within neighborhoods. Religious observances occurred at designated times, with offerings made at household shrines or attendance at temples for communal ceremonies scheduled regularly. Maintaining proper relations with divine forces provided reassurance that supernatural powers would continue supporting household welfare and community prosperity generally. Prayers spoken during daily activities acknowledged dependence on forces beyond human control that influenced success in work and health outcomes. Participation in religious community created bonds among believers sharing common practices and beliefs about the nature of existence and proper conduct. Each observance connected present actions to timeless patterns established by ancestors and maintained through continued practice across generations passing forward. Knowledge transmission happened constantly through observation and participation rather than through formal instruction separated from practical application in real contexts. Children absorbed information about proper behavior and useful skills simply by being present during adult activities occurring around them daily. Corrections when mistakes occurred taught lessons about right methods and appropriate conduct without lengthy verbal explanations of underlying principles involved. Gradual assumption of responsibilities allowed developing capabilities to build through practice with increasing independence as competence grew over years of participation. Each generation learned from the previous generation through living together and sharing daily life rather than through artificial educational settings. Tools remained essential for accomplishing work across all activities from food preparation to construction to craft production throughout the community economy. Maintaining tools in working condition required regular attention to sharpening and cleaning and repairing damage before it progressed to complete failure. Replacing worn tools happened when repair became impractical, though the timing involved judgment balancing repair costs against replacement expenses and availability. Storing tools properly between uses protected them from weather damage and prevented loss or theft that would disrupt work requiring those implements. Each tool represented accumulated knowledge about how to accomplish specific tasks embodied in physical forms passed between users across generations of use. Material knowledge guided work with substances ranging from clay to metal to fibers, each having characteristic properties requiring specific handling. Understanding how different wood split or carved or bent informed choices about which species to use for particular purposes requiring specific characteristics. Knowing how metals responded to heating and hammering shaped approaches to creating and repairing tools and implements from these materials available locally. Recognizing which plants provided useful fibers or dyes or medicines required accumulated experience passed through generations observing and experimenting with local flora. Each material carried information about its nature that skilled workers internalized through years of direct physical engagement with these substances regularly. Seasonal awareness guided agricultural activities and influenced household preparations for changing conditions throughout the annual cycle, repeating predictably each year. Recognizing signs of approaching planting season triggered activities preparing fields and acquiring seeds needed for crops that would grow during coming months. Noticing indicators of harvest time approaching mobilized labor for gathering crops before weather changes could damage unharvested produce remaining in fields. Preparing for winter involved preserving foods and gathering fuel and making dwelling spaces more weatherproof before cold periods arrive predictably each year. Each season brought characteristic activities that marked time's passage through the year in patterns unchanged across many generations of agricultural practice. Evening approached once more as light began its gradual fade toward darkness that would end another day's activities soon enough. Work pace slowed as fatigue accumulated and remaining daylight indicated time remaining before stopping would become necessary regardless of task completion. Thoughts turned toward evening meal and rest periods that would follow the day's exertions in fields and workshops and households throughout. Gathering tools and securing work areas prepared for overnight absence when spaces would be unoccupied and vulnerable to weather or theft. Each day's ending followed familiar patterns leading into night rest before another dawn would begin the cycle once more tomorrow. Return journeys homeward began as workers left their labor sites moving along routes connecting workplaces to residential areas where dwelling spaces waited. Familiar paths required no conscious navigation as feet followed courses walked daily through years of making these same trips between locations. Carrying tools or materials or products of the day's labor added weight that tired bodies accommodated through adjustments in posture and pace. Meeting others traveling similar routes created opportunities for brief exchanges, though exhaustion limited conversation to essential communications about practical matters only. Each homeward walk marked transition between work identity and household role that awaited in domestic spaces ahead soon now. Arriving home involved depositing work items in appropriate locations before beginning evening routines that would occupy remaining hours before sleep. Removing work clothing soiled from the day's exertions allowed changing into cleaner garments kept for wearing during evening household activities and rest. Washing exposed skin removed accumulated dirt and sweat, providing physical refreshment and psychological shift from labor to domestic life modes. Reconnecting with household members involved brief updates about the day's events and coordinating plans for evening meal and any remaining tasks. Each arrival followed established patterns that marked boundaries between different contexts and the behaviors appropriate to those distinct settings now. Evening meal preparation involved simpler procedures than midday cooking given reduced energy available and approaching darkness that would limit working time. Using leftovers when available minimized new cooking required while still providing adequate nutrition for household members needing sustenance before sleep. Reheating foods or combining cold items with fresh bread created meals requiring minimal fuel and attention during preparation now occurring. Coordinating dish completion to finish simultaneously involved mental tracking of different items progressing at different rates toward readiness for serving soon. Each evening meal emerged from available ingredients and energy levels present balanced against nutritional needs of household members gathering to eat. Serving food marked the gathering of household members after hours spent in separate activities during the day just ending now. Distributing portions according to established household patterns reflected age and work demands and hierarchy within family structure maintained across time. Beginning consumption provided satisfaction of immediate hunger and the comfort of familiar foods prepared in accustomed ways using known ingredients regularly. Conversation remained limited as tiredness reduced capacity for extended social interaction beyond brief exchanges about immediate practical concerns present. Each meal served both nutritional function and social purpose of gathering household members briefly before dispersing again to individual rest preparations. Cleanup from eating involved washing vessels and implements used during meal preparation and consumption just completed moments before now fading. Water saved from earlier activities or brought fresh if needed served for rinsing food residues from surfaces requiring cleaning before storage. Returning cleaned items to designated storage locations ensured availability when next meal preparation would require these implements again tomorrow morning. Disposing of scraps to animals or collection areas completed the cycle of meal preparation and consumption that would repeat tomorrow identically. Each cleanup followed efficient patterns minimizing effort while adequately preparing for next use of kitchen areas and tools stored there. Lighting lamps remained minimal as households conserved oil and managed fire risks present in structures built with flammable materials throughout. Small flames provided just sufficient illumination for necessary movements through darkening spaces as natural light faded completely away now outside. Positioning lamps away from fabrics and other combustible materials reduced accident risks that could spread fire rapidly through connected dwellings. Extinguishing flames happened as soon as adequate darkness made continued burning unnecessary for any remaining activities requiring visibility at all. Each flame represented both utility and constant danger requiring vigilant attention from those living in vulnerable wooden and mud brick structures here. Children's bedtime preparations began first as younger bodies required more sleep to sustain growth and energy for active days ahead tomorrow. Arranging sleeping areas with adequate bedding for comfort and warmth ensured rest quality during nighttime hours rapidly approaching with gathering darkness. Settling restless children required patient attention as the transition from waking to sleeping sometimes met resistance from minds not yet ready. Darkness deepening around dwelling spaces helped signal the appropriate time for sleep as visual stimulation decreased with fading light outside. Each child followed patterns established through countless previous evenings in these same spaces with these same familiar routines continuing nightly. Adults completed remaining evening tasks including final checks of household security before retiring themselves to sleeping areas arranged earlier today. Ensuring doors were secured and fire hazards minimized provided mental peace necessary for releasing conscious control to sleep's unconscious state ahead. Reviewing tomorrow's anticipated tasks occupied thoughts briefly before exhaustion overwhelmed planning and drew minds toward rest instead of continued activity. Settling into familiar sleeping positions that years of use had trained bodies to recognize as conducive to comfort and rest. Each person released the day's accumulated tensions and concerns, allowing physical and mental fatigue to carry consciousness into sleep's darkness. Night settled over dwelling spaces and streets as remaining activity ceased and most residents surrendered to sleep's necessary rest. Occasional sounds punctuated the general quiet as late workers or animals moved through darkness on various purposes requiring nighttime activity. Wind moving through structures created sounds that formed ambient background of nighttime hours passing slowly until dawn would arrive again. Temperature dropped from daytime highs creating cooler conditions more comfortable for sleeping through long hours until morning light would return. Each night followed this pattern of gradual quieting and cooling as the city's activity level declined toward minimal baseline during deepest darkness. Sleep claimed tired bodies as unconsciousness provided respite from the day's physical and mental demands just concluded hours before now passing. Breathing deepened and slowed into steady rhythms characteristic of rest states when awareness of surroundings faded almost completely into nothing. Dreams processed the day's experiences through imagery and narratives largely forgotten upon waking but serving purposes during sleep nonetheless occurring. Bodies remained mostly still except for occasional position shifts seeking comfort during long periods of lying in one place overnight. Each sleeper moved through cycles of lighter and deeper sleep stages unfolding automatically without conscious awareness during their passage through night. Nighttime hours passed slowly for the few remaining wakeful including guards and those whose sleep was disrupted by various disturbances. Watching over sleeping community required attention to unusual sounds or sights that might indicate problems developing somewhere in the darkness around. Walking patrol routes provided movement keeping bodies alert during long lonely hours when most others slept peacefully in their homes nearby. Mental alertness challenged by lack of activity and isolation made these hours sometimes difficult to endure until relief came with dawn. Each watcher maintained vigilance through the night despite the challenges of staying focused during these quiet lonely hours passing so slowly. Pre-dawn stillness held the deepest quiet of the entire daily cycle as even nighttime activity had largely ceased by these hours. Darkness remained complete though subtle changes in eastern sky began hinting at approaching dawn still hidden below the horizon currently. Bodies continued sleeping deeply during these hours of maximum rest when recovery from previous days' exertions proceeded most effectively now. The city waited in suspension between night's rest and day's activity as time moved steadily toward another dawn's arrival soon ahead. Each pre-dawn period represented the transition point where night's rest would yield to day's activity beginning once more with returning light. First light appeared gradually as faint brightening along eastern horizon marked the sun's approaching rise above the land's edge ahead. Darkness lessened almost imperceptibly at first before the pace of brightening accelerated as sunrise neared its actual moment of arrival. Birds began stirring and calling as increasing light triggered instinctive responses to begin their daily activities of feeding and territory defense. People started waking in dwelling spaces as light entering through openings signaled the appropriate time for rising and beginning preparations for another day. Each dawn brought the same gradual return of light and activity as darkness retreated and the daily cycle began once more. Waking involved gradual return of consciousness as awareness of surroundings increased and bodies prepared to resume movement after night's stillness. Stretching and shifting positions eased stiffness from lying still through long hours of sleep just ending moments before now passing. Eyes adjusted to increasing light levels as the room's details became visible emerging from darkness that had obscured them overnight completely. Mental orientation to the new day involved remembering what tasks awaited and beginning the mental preparation for activities ahead soon. Each waking followed this pattern of gradual transition from sleep's unconsciousness to full awareness of the day beginning now around them. Rising from sleeping areas happened when sufficient light made movement safe and the body felt ready to begin another day's activities. Arranging bedding after rising prepared sleeping spaces for evening use many hours ahead when rest would be needed once more. Moving through dwelling spaces in early morning light involved navigating familiar layouts that required no conscious attention after years of daily passage. Beginning morning preparations engaged hands and bodies in familiar routines that would structure the next hours identically to countless previous mornings. Each new day began with these same actions performed in the same order following patterns so established they felt like natural inevitabilities. Morning tasks resumed their familiar sequence as people moved through established routines without requiring conscious decisions about what came next. Dressing happened automatically with hands selecting garments and fastening them while minds remained partially occupied with other thoughts about the day. Food preparation began with the same initial actions of assessing supplies and gathering needed implements from their storage locations throughout. Water collection would happen soon as vessels were prepared for the journey to fountains where supplies could be obtained as always. Each morning activity connected to the next in unbroken chains of actions that constituted the daily routine, continuing forward endlessly without variation. The pattern of days continued forward through time, with each sunrise bringing the resumption of routines that had persisted for lifetimes before. Morning activities unfolded in sequences so familiar that conscious attention was barely required for their execution throughout the early hours. Hands moved through preparation tasks while minds drifted to other considerations or remained in the half-aware state between sleep and full wakefulness. The rhythm of household activities synchronized with the increasing light as the sun climbed higher, bringing warmth and brightness to working spaces. Each day resembled every previous day in its fundamental structure, while marking another instance of ongoing life continuing forward without dramatic change. Work began as it always began, with tools gathered from storage and materials prepared for the day's production or labor. Bodies assumed positions learned through years of performing these same tasks in these same spaces with these same implements repeatedly. Movements flowed automatically once work commenced, as muscles remembered the sequences required without conscious direction of each motion individually involved. Time passed unmarked except through the gradual progress of work and the changing position of sun and shadows across working surfaces. Each work session merged into the broader pattern of countless previous sessions, extending backward through time and forward into the future ahead. The city hummed with activity as thousands of individuals performed their particular roles within the larger system of urban life continuing. Sounds of various trades mixed together, creating ambient noise that characterized daytime hours when work proceeded everywhere simultaneously throughout areas. Smells from cooking and crafts and animals filled the air, creating olfactory environment familiar to all residents living here continuously. Movement through streets and spaces created constant flow of people carrying goods or traveling between locations for various purposes relating to work. Each person contributed to the collective activity that sustained the city's function and its residents' survival through coordinated efforts over time. Seasons moved through their cycle, bringing predictable changes in temperature and weather patterns that affected but did not fundamentally alter daily routines. Warmer months required adjustments in work timing to avoid the most intense heat, while cooler periods demanded additional clothing and fuel. Planting seasons brought certain types of work, while harvest periods required different efforts from those involved in agricultural production cycles. The annual progression marked time's passage in broader units than daily cycles, while maintaining the basic pattern of recurring activities throughout. Each season brought its characteristic tasks that repeated year after year in patterns unchanged across many generations of practice and experience. Household maintenance continued as ongoing necessity, with periodic attention to structures and possessions preventing gradual deterioration from progressing unchecked over time. Small repairs addressed minor problems before they developed into larger issues requiring more extensive interventions and greater resource expenditure later. Cleaning and organizing maintained functionality of dwelling spaces and ensured that necessary items remained accessible when needed for various purposes. The work never finished completely but continued in cycles of attention to different areas and items requiring care throughout living spaces. Each maintenance task connected to the broader effort of sustaining household function across time through attentive care of physical environment and possessions. Social relationships evolved slowly through ongoing interactions that built history between individuals and families over years of proximity and exchange. Trust developed through consistent, reliable behavior demonstrated repeatedly in various contexts requiring cooperation or assistance between parties involved in relationships. Obligations accumulated through exchanges of help and resources, creating networks of mutual support that provided security beyond individual household capacity alone. The bonds strengthened gradually through time as shared experiences and reciprocal assistance deepened connections between community members living near each other. Each interaction added to the history, binding people together in complex webs of relationships spanning entire neighborhoods and extending beyond them. Children grew through stages of development that saw them gradually assuming more responsibility within household operations and community structures over years. Observation of adults at work provided initial learning that eventually led to participation under supervision before independent work became possible. Physical growth brought strength, enabling performance of tasks previously beyond capability due to size or endurance limitations present in younger bodies. Knowledge accumulated through experience as repeated exposure to situations built understanding of appropriate responses and effective methods for various challenges. Each child's progression followed patterns while allowing for individual variations in timing and particular strengths that emerged during development processes. Elders moved into less physically demanding roles as aging reduced capacity for sustained heavy labor requiring youthful strength and endurance levels. Accumulated knowledge and experience made them valuable for guidance and decision-making even as physical contributions to household work diminished over time. Respect for age and wisdom provided social position even when economic productivity declined in later years of life's progression ahead. Care from younger household members supported elders through periods when they had supported others earlier in the life cycle's natural flow. Each generation moved through these stages in turn as time carried individuals from youth through productive adulthood into elder years passing. Deaths occurred periodically, removing individuals from the community and creating absences that remaining members adjusted to over time through role redistribution. Mourning periods allowed grief expression before life resumed its normal patterns with modified household compositions reflecting the losses sustained in recent times. Inheritance transferred property and possessions to surviving family members according to established customs governing such transitions between generations of family ownership. Memory of deceased individuals faded gradually as years passed and new people joined the community through births replacing those who departed. Each death marked the continuation of cycles that saw individuals come and go while the community itself persisted forward across generations. Births brought new members into households and community, creating joy despite the additional demands placed on resources and available labor time. Care of infants required significant attention from mothers and other household members sharing responsibility for the youngest vulnerable members now present. Celebration of survival through dangerous early periods of life marked milestones as children reached ages indicating likely continued survival toward adulthood. Integration into household work began early as even young children contributed small efforts that prepared them for eventual full participation later. Each birth represented continuation of family lines and community existence into future generations who would eventually replace those currently living now. Marriages created new household formations or joined individuals to existing households through negotiations between families involved in these significant social arrangements. Economic considerations mixed with personal compatibility and family connections in determining suitable matches between potential partners being considered for life unions. Ceremonies marked the transitions as couples assumed new roles within community structures and began their own household operations together ahead. Children born from these unions created next generation that would continue the family's lines into the future beyond current lifespans. Each marriage wove new connections into social fabric, binding community members together through kinship and alliance networks expanding through time passing. Markets continued their regular schedules with traders appearing at designated times to exchange goods produced in various locations throughout surrounding areas. The flow of items through market systems distributed specialized products from craftspeople to consumers needing those goods for their various activities. Prices fluctuated with supply and demand but remained within ranges that had persisted over long periods without dramatic disruption to patterns. Regular participation in market systems connected individuals to broader economic networks extending beyond immediate local communities into distant regions through commerce. Each market day repeated familiar patterns while facilitating exchanges that sustained both individual livelihoods and community prosperity through continued trading and interaction. Religious calendars organized time through festivals and observances occurring at regular intervals throughout the year's progression forward continuously through seasons. Special occasions broke normal work routines temporarily as communities gathered for ceremonies and celebrations marking sacred times within the religious calendar framework. Offerings and sacrifices maintained proper relations with divine powers believed to influence human affairs and natural conditions affecting survival and general prosperity. Participation in religious life reinforced community identity and provided meaning beyond the purely material concerns of daily subsistence and necessary work. Each observance connected present activities to timeless patterns established by tradition and maintained through continued practice across many generations of faithful believers. Knowledge transmission continued through observation and practice rather than formal instruction as each generation learned from those who came immediately before. Skills developed gradually through participation in actual work under guidance from experienced practitioners who corrected errors and demonstrated proper techniques through repetition. Understanding deepened through years of engagement with materials and processes until intuitive grasp replaced conscious effort in skilled work performance. The accumulated knowledge of community resided in living practitioners who would pass it forward to the next generation following after them. Each person learned what they needed for their particular role while contributing their own small refinements to methods used regularly. Tools and techniques remained largely unchanged over long periods as traditional methods proved adequate for meeting needs without requiring much innovation. Modifications occurred slowly when clear advantages emerged from accidentally discovered improvements in established processes and methods being employed currently in work. Resistance to change protected against wasted effort on untested approaches while occasionally limiting potential improvements that might have enhanced overall efficiency. The conservatism reflected practical wisdom that reliable known methods were safer than uncertain innovations that might fail when household resources remained limited. Each generation received methods from previous generations and passed them forward largely unchanged to those who would follow in succession. Daily life continued its pattern of repetitive activities that filled hours and days and weeks and months and years in steady cycles. Morning preparation led to daytime work, which led to evening rest, which led to nighttime sleep, which led to morning preparation returning. The rhythm repeated endlessly with minor variations that did not fundamentally alter the basic structure of existence for most residents here. Predictability provided security and stability that made planning possible and reduced uncertainty about what each day would require from those living. Each cycle completed prepared for the next cycle that would follow immediately afterward in unbroken succession forward through time's continuous progression. Generations succeeded one another as children became adults who became elders who eventually passed away, leaving space for new generations following behind. The community persisted beyond individual lifespans as collective identity and shared practices continued despite constant turnover in actual membership through births and deaths. Each generation received knowledge and customs from previous generations and transmitted them forward to following generations with minor modifications accumulated gradually. The continuity connected past to present to future in chains of transmission that extended far beyond any single lifetime span. Memory of specific individuals faded, but the patterns they had followed and transmitted persisted in the ongoing life of the community. Buildings aged and required maintenance or eventual replacement as materials deteriorated beyond practical repair over decades or centuries of use and exposure. New structures rose on sites where old ones had stood, using methods and materials passed down through generations of builders practicing their craft. The physical landscape changed slowly as individual structures came and went, but the overall pattern of streets and neighborhoods remained recognizable across long periods. Each building represented temporary physical manifestation of ongoing community life that would outlast any particular structure standing at any given moment. The city renewed itself continuously through gradual replacement while maintaining essential character and organization inherited from the distant past. Streets wore down from traffic and required periodic resurfacing to maintain passable conditions for the constant movement of people and animals and goods. Paving stones settled or broke and needed replacement in ongoing maintenance that never reached completion but continued endlessly forward through time. The paths themselves persisted even as their surfaces required attention, keeping routes functional for transport and communication between different city areas. Each street connected multiple generations of users who had walked the same routes for different purposes across spans of time. The network of passages organized space and movement in patterns established long ago and maintained through continued use and necessary upkeep. Water systems required constant maintenance to keep aqueducts functioning and fountains flowing for the populations depending on these supplies for survival. Engineers and workers attended to channels and pipes and distribution points, ensuring adequate flow reached all areas served by infrastructure constructed generations earlier. The systems represented collective investment and ongoing commitment to maintaining essential services supporting urban life at its current scale and density. Each fountain served neighborhoods that had grown around these water access points over time as residential patterns organized around essential resource locations. The water flowed continuously, connecting present users to past builders and future beneficiaries of systems transcending individual lifespans through their utility. Public spaces hosted activities that brought community members together for commerce and social interaction and ceremonial purposes throughout the years passing. Markets operated on regular schedules, providing opportunities for exchange while also serving as gathering points where news circulated and relationships maintained themselves. Festivals and celebrations brought larger crowds together for shared experiences that reinforced community bonds and collective identity across neighborhoods and social divisions. The spaces themselves persisted as community resources even as the particular individuals using them changed constantly through the generations passing by. Each gathering place held memories of countless previous gatherings in layers of history accumulating over time through continued use for community purposes. Night descended once more as another day drew toward its close and the cycle prepared to begin again with tomorrow's dawn. Darkness spread across dwelling spaces and streets as residents retired to rest after completing the day's necessary labors and activities throughout. Sleep would claim most within these hours of darkness, while a few remained wakeful, attending to tasks or standing watch through nighttime. The city rested in collective stillness before morning light would return and awaken it once more to another day's work. Each night represented pause and preparation for continuation of patterns that would resume with the sun's inevitable return at dawn approaching ahead. The cycle continued as it had continued through countless repetitions, extending backward through time beyond memory or recorded knowledge available now. Morning came again with light returning to spaces darkened through the night just past, in sleep and stillness throughout dwelling areas. Rising happened as rising always happened, with bodies stirring and beginning movements that would lead through familiar sequences of preparation activities. Hands reached for garments kept in accustomed storage locations where they rested between wearing periods throughout days and nights passing by. Each morning resembled every morning in its essential nature, while marking another instance of the pattern repeating forward through time's progression. Preparation activities unfolded in their established order as people moved through tasks without requiring conscious deliberation about what came next. Dressing and washing and beginning food preparation followed one after another in chains of action so familiar they felt inevitable rather than chosen. The coordination of multiple household members performing different tasks simultaneously happened automatically through years of shared living in these same spaces. Each person knew their role and performed it without needing direction or reminders about what the morning required from them now. The household functioned through accumulated habit as much as through conscious cooperation among those sharing the dwelling space and daily routines. Grinding grain produced flour as grinding had produced flour through countless previous mornings in this household and in households throughout the area. The circular motion of stones crushing grain between their surfaces created the familiar sound that marked this activity wherever it occurred. Flour accumulated around edges and was gathered into containers that would hold it until needed for mixing into dough later today. The work engaged muscles trained through years of performing this motion until the action felt natural and required minimal conscious attention during execution. Each grinding session resembled every previous session while contributing to the ongoing production of food that sustained household members through another day. Water collection involved the familiar journey to fountain locations where others gathered for the same purpose at roughly the same times daily. The routes to water sources followed paths worn by countless feet traveling these same ways over years of residence in these neighborhoods. Waiting turns at fountains provided opportunities for brief social exchanges that maintained relationships and circulated information through the community informally but effectively. Filling vessels and returning home completed the cycle that would repeat multiple times through the day as household needs arose regularly. Each water collection trip mirrored previous trips in its basic pattern while representing another necessary instance of resource gathering for household operations. Bread making proceeded through stages that had become so familiar that hands moved through the work almost independently of conscious thought directing them. Mixing flour and water in proportions learned through experience created dough that would rise and bake into bread for household consumption today. Kneading engaged hands in rhythmic motions that transformed the mixture into proper consistency for the rising period that would follow this preparation. Covering dough and setting it aside to rise provided interval for other tasks while fermentation processes occurred without requiring active involvement. Each stage of bread making connected to stages before and after in sequences that repeated daily with minimal variation over time passing. Ovens heated as fires burned and surfaces warmed to temperatures needed for baking bread properly when dough was ready for cooking. Judging heat levels through observation and experience ensured adequate temperature without benefit of measuring devices indicating exact conditions present within ovens. Placing shaped loaves into heated ovens completed the transfer from raw ingredients to finished food that would sustain household members through meals today. Baking proceeded according to familiar timing learned through countless previous sessions producing bread in these same ovens over years of daily use. Each baking day followed patterns established long ago and maintained through continued practice generation after generation passing forward through time. Morning meals provided first food after overnight fasting periods that had lasted through the hours of darkness and sleep just concluded. Eating happened quickly as work awaited attention and the day's tasks required beginning soon after minimal food provided needed energy for labor. Simple combinations of bread and other available items served functional purposes of fueling bodies without ceremony or extended social interaction during consumption. Cleanup from breakfast was brief given the uncomplicated nature of morning meals that rarely involved elaborate preparation or numerous dishes requiring washing. Each morning meal served its purpose of enabling work to proceed by providing necessary sustenance for physical exertion throughout the day ahead. Work began as work always began with movement toward labor locations and assumption of positions for performing tasks that would occupy most daylight hours. Bodies settled into familiar postures and hands reached for tools kept in designated places where they rested between uses during previous work sessions. Beginning actual production or labor engaged muscles and attention in ways that allowed time to pass without constant awareness of its steady progression. The rhythm of work established itself naturally as motions repeated and progress accumulated through sustained effort continuing hour after hour forward. Each work session resembled countless previous sessions in its basic nature while representing another day's contribution to ongoing productive activities sustaining livelihoods. The city functioned through the coordinated efforts of thousands performing their particular roles within the larger system of urban life continuing forward. Sounds from various activities mixed together creating ambient noise that characterized daytime hours when work proceeded everywhere simultaneously throughout areas. Movement through streets and spaces maintained constant flow as people traveled between locations for purposes related to their work or household needs. The collective activity sustained the city's operations and provided for the needs of residents depending on this complex system of interdependent efforts. Each person contributed their labor while depending on others' contributions for goods and services they could not produce themselves within household capacities. Market activity continued with exchanges between producers and consumers facilitating distribution of specialized goods throughout the community and beyond into surrounding regions. Negotiations over prices and quantities proceeded according to established customs that both buyers and sellers understood from participation in countless previous transactions. The flow of goods through market systems connected distant production sites to local consumers needing items they could not make themselves. Regular market schedules provided predictable opportunities for exchange that residents could plan around when managing their household supplies and production activities. Each market day repeated familiar patterns while serving essential economic functions that sustained both individual livelihoods and community prosperity through ongoing commerce. Afternoon heat brought the familiar challenge of maintaining work pace through the warmest hours when temperatures peaked before beginning gradual decline. Seeking shade when possible and taking brief rest breaks allowed continued labor without excessive risk from heat exposure during this demanding period. Water consumption increased to replace fluids lost through sweat produced during physical exertion in elevated temperatures present now at midday. The work continued at adjusted pace that acknowledged physical limitations while still making progress toward completing tasks requiring attention before day's end. Each hot afternoon demanded respect for the body's limits while maintaining productivity at sustainable levels through these challenging hours passing slowly. Evening approached bringing the familiar pattern of lengthening shadows and changing light quality that signaled the day's progression toward nighttime ahead. Activity levels began shifting as people anticipated the approaching evening meal and rest period that would follow after the day's exertions throughout. Movement toward home locations increased as workers completed their labor and began journeys back to dwelling spaces where households would gather for evening. The transition from work to domestic life happened gradually as people moved from one context to another, preparing mentally for different activities. Each evening's approach followed this pattern of gradual winding down from day's peak activity toward night's rest and quieter rhythms ahead. Evening meals provided nutrition and brief family gathering after hours spent in separate activities during the day just concluding now around them. Simple foods prepared with minimal effort served functional purposes of sustaining bodies through the night until morning eating would resume the cycle. Consumption happened without elaborate ceremony as tiredness reduced energy available for extended social interaction among household members present now together. Cleanup followed eating with brief attention to washing vessels and storing any remaining food safely until next meal would require preparation. Each evening meal marked the transition point between active day and restful night in the ongoing daily rhythm continuing forward endlessly. Darkness settled over dwelling spaces as natural light faded completely and most activity ceased for the night hours approaching ahead now. Lamp use remained minimal as households conserved oil and managed fire risks present in structures vulnerable to burning if flames spread. Preparing sleeping areas and settling children occupied remaining evening hours before adults would also retire to rest through darkness until morning. The city quieted as residents withdrew into private spaces and public areas emptied of the daytime crowds and activity characterizing earlier hours. Each night brought this familiar pattern of gradual settling into rest mode that would persist until dawn's light returned once more. Sleep came as exhaustion claimed consciousness after the day's physical and mental demands depleted energy reserves requiring restoration through rest periods. Breathing deepened and steadied into rhythms characteristic of sleep states when awareness of surroundings faded almost completely into unconsciousness present. Dreams occurred though their content rarely remained in memory upon waking as minds processed experiences through imagery beyond conscious direction or control. Bodies remained mostly still through long periods of night except for occasional position shifts seeking comfort during hours of lying prone. Each night of sleep served restorative functions that prepared bodies and minds for the coming day's demands that would resume with dawn. Night passed slowly through its darkest hours when even the limited activity of early evening had ceased almost entirely throughout residential areas. Occasional sounds punctuated the general quiet as animals moved or late workers traveled through streets toward destinations not yet reached today. The stillness held the city in suspension between the day just ended and the day that would begin with sunrise approaching gradually. Darkness covered everything in uniform obscurity that made navigation difficult for any still moving through spaces without adequate illumination present. Each night maintained this pattern of stillness and darkness that would persist until morning light began its gradual return with approaching dawn. Pre-dawn hours brought the deepest quiet of the entire cycle as even nighttime activity had largely ceased by this point before sunrise. Darkness remained complete though subtle changes in sky brightness began hinting at approaching dawn still below the horizon line ahead. Sleep continued for most residents as bodies remained in restorative states through these hours of maximum rest before waking would resume. The city waited in collective stillness for the light that would return and begin another cycle identical to countless cycles preceding. Each pre-dawn period marked this transition point where night's rest would yield to day's activity beginning once more with inevitable regularity. Light appeared gradually as dawn brightened the eastern horizon, marking the sun's approach toward rising above the land ahead of observers. Darkness lessened incrementally at first before the pace of brightening accelerated as sunrise neared its actual moment of arrival above the horizon. Birds began their calling as increasing light triggered instinctive responses to begin daily activities of feeding and territory maintenance throughout areas. People started stirring in dwelling spaces as light entering through openings signaled the appropriate time for rising and beginning preparations once more. Each dawn brought this same gradual return of light and activity as darkness retreated and the daily cycle began its repetition forward. Waking involved the familiar transition from sleep's unconsciousness to increasing awareness of surroundings and the day beginning around sleepers now stirring. Bodies shifted and stretched, easing stiffness from lying still through long hours of night just concluding moments before in darkness. Eyes adjusted to increasing light levels as room details became visible, emerging from obscurity that had hidden them overnight completely from view. Mental orientation to the new day involved remembering tasks awaiting attention and beginning preparations for activities ahead soon to commence. Each waking followed this pattern of gradual transition from sleep to full awareness of the day now beginning once more around. Rising from sleeping areas happened when sufficient light made movement safe and bodies felt ready to begin another day's activities ahead. Arranging bedding after rising prepared sleeping spaces for evening use many hours ahead when rest would be needed once more tonight. Moving through dwelling spaces in early morning light involved navigating familiar layouts that required no conscious attention after years of daily passage. Beginning morning preparations engaged hands and bodies in familiar routines that would structure the next hours identically to countless previous mornings. Each new day began with these same actions performed in the same order following patterns so established they felt inevitable rather than chosen. The pattern continued forward through time as days accumulated into weeks and weeks into months and months into years passing. Each cycle resembled every previous cycle in its fundamental structure while marking another instance of ongoing life continuing without dramatic alteration. Routines repeated with such consistency that variation became notable when it occurred on rare occasions throughout the year's progression. The predictability provided security and structure that organized existence into recognizable units of time marked by familiar activities recurring regularly. Each repetition reinforced the pattern and prepared for the next repetition that would follow immediately afterward in unbroken succession forward. Generations succeeded one another as the cycle of birth and growth and aging and death continued beyond any individual lifespan's duration. Children observed adults and learned the patterns they would later follow when assuming their own roles within household and community structures. Knowledge and customs transmitted from one generation to the next maintained continuity despite constant turnover in actual individuals comprising the community. The patterns persisted as people came and went through the ongoing life that transcended any particular person's temporary participation. Each generation contributed to the continuity while also being shaped by patterns inherited from generations that had come before them in time. The city persisted through ongoing maintenance and gradual renewal as individual structures aged and required replacement over long periods passing. New buildings rose where old ones had stood using methods and materials passed down through generations of builders practicing their craft. The overall pattern of streets and neighborhoods remained recognizable even as particular buildings came and went through cycles of construction and deterioration. Collective life continued beyond the physical structures that housed it at any given moment in time's progression forward through years. Each building served temporarily before eventual replacement while the city itself persisted as ongoing entity transcending its physical components constantly renewing. Time flowed forward carrying present moments into past while bringing future moments into present in continuous progression without pause or interruption. Days and seasons and years marked time's passage through natural cycles that repeated in recognizable patterns organizing existence into comprehensible units. Individuals lived their lives within this framework of recurring patterns that provided structure and meaning through participation in something larger than themselves. The continuity connected past to present to future in chains of causation and tradition extending beyond any single lifetime's brief span. Each moment connected to moments before and moments after an unbroken flow of existence continuing forward without visible end from present vantage. The rhythm continued as it would continue forward through time as long as people remained to perform the tasks and maintain the patterns. Morning would bring rising and preparation and the beginning of work that would occupy daylight hours until evening brought rest. Night would bring sleep and restoration before dawn would return to begin the cycle once more in endless repetition. The pattern held constant across days and seasons and years as time moved forward carrying individuals through their lives within its structure. Each cycle prepared for the next cycle in the ongoing flow of existence continuing without interruption or fundamental alteration to its basic nature.